All right, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome outsider and blooper reel shit. Every Friday, we welcome outsider and transgressive writers to come and share their work. So that's what we're going to do this fucking Friday. So let's get going here. First up is Gabe, and I'll share the link here in the chat. And this one doesn't go on Twitter. All right, Gabe, it's all yours.
All right. This is brand new. I just finished it today. It's called No Saints, No Martyrs. Hold on, let me put my dog down. This should have only been about one girl, and in an even better world, I wouldn't have to write about either of them. The first girl we'll call Kim, since there's no one you can give her real name to, because not only is she no longer with us, she is no longer with herself. The second girl we'll call Luna. Luckily, while she is no longer with me, she is very much with herself, though some days it's easier for me to think of her as no longer with us. I know that sounds bad, but sometimes the worst idea is also the easiest one you need to merely survive. The first time I wrote about Kim eliminating herself, I disguised it behind a nihilistic police procedural because I wanted to find her truth through fiction, because I wanted to convolute a mystery around a facsimile of her to keep me that much further from her truth, because I wanted to protect both her and my grief behind a wall of crude bloodshed and alcoholic cop tropes. I knew police procedurals had fallen out of fashion. Another reason why I chose that retired noir subgenre, because I hoped no one would read it. Truth, we don't really need it anymore. Not when we have the internet and its reverse focus of social media. There are no more mysteries to keep us up at night. It's all right there in front of us. Kim knew this, which is why she reserved the right to exit so deliberately, but not before leaving us a privileged viewing of her last words and thoughts on video, just seconds before she hanged herself. In a way, she wanted to make sure we were all on the guest list. She had been making these videos, sometimes erudite pop culture riff rambling, other times humble updates on her crippling depression, for as long as we can remember. So there was no way to assume it wasn't just another one, this last one. Unless we paid closer attention to the fact she was dressed up for a special occasion, glamorous in a black evening dress and white leather elbow gloves, a black dog collar banded around her neck, like an escort waiting for someone to take her away, her from herself. Her tears told us, without telling us, she had been waiting for a long time. At the end of the day, I love you, she told the camera, us, and you're going to be okay. She reached behind her. In a playful, almost mocking gesture, she revealed a leash buckled to her collar for discipline so she could not stray. She pulled it upwards, a punching tug, tightening the collar, sticking her tongue out the corner of her mouth. She repeated this a second time, not as funny. She uttered 2 fucks. The one rang like an acknowledgement of how absurd this all was, or maybe to punctuate that this was really, really going to happen. The second fuck was slightly more drastic as she turned away from the camera, realizing just how late it had become. She walked out of frame. While it was still early evening, we were just too late. A body of a tiny but gorgeous Korean woman hung from a ceiling fan, dog collar choking her neck in permanence. The leash attached was coiled up tight like twisted wrought iron. As the leash reached maximum tautness, she began to slowly rotate the other direction, implying she still possessed a post-mortem form of perpetual motion. A bar stool stood 2 feet away from her dangling high heels, still rocking in that slight, slow pendulum, indicating the freshness of her death. Both stilettos pointing to where she should have remained standing in a better world. Her body subtly spun like a ballerina music box or a cake in a display window, allowing a witness to be privy to every detail, whether they wanted to or not. Her exit transcended morality, forcing a break in an imperfect storm. Everyone has a breaking point, just as everyone deserves a break. Horizons darken, blinding one to the merger between the horizons line and our path of unfolding amoral possibility. Kim was my first real friend in Los Angeles. at a lonely, uncertain, but thanks to her, transitional time. She zeroed in on me, bestowing her approval on another social orphan. She introduced me and everyone cool. She introduced me to everyone cool, allowing me to be somebody, an essential agent of situation's chaos, her and I, us all. So when she left, I returned very quickly to a lonely, uncertain, and thanks to her, transitional time. In many ways, she made me who I was. So when she killed herself, it was impossible to conceive. Many react to the suicidal. Why wouldn't you want to see what tomorrow will bring? But the fact that we can't conceive of the finality of their action is nearly the point, as the suicidal aims not to be inconceivable, but unconceived. Some are simply fatigued at being reborn over and over and over again. Once further details came down the pike, I didn't approve, but I understood from afar. How she couldn't renew her immigration status because a judge frowned on her old domestic violence charge, a high heel in a boyfriend's face. How our current administration was aggressively deporting people to their country of origin, even though Kim was found on the streets of Korea by her foster parents before moving to America when she was only 5 years old. How she was seeing a married man who would never quite commit to her, forever the other woman. So when your blood parents don't want you, your boyfriend doesn't want you, then your own country doesn't want you, what would you do? I tried asking myself this through the shock I was in, through the membrane of coping machinations of numbness. Instead, I just started crying. Left of the dial by the replacements came on my car stereo. It possessed her spirit. I lost it, pulled over to see if I could find it again to get us home. Luckily, my girlfriend Luna was by my side in the passenger seat. She knew Kim well too, so we were going to go through this together. It was going to be better than when my best friend died of a drug overdose 2 years earlier. Since he had lived in another state, Luna had never met him. So she scolded me for grieving too deeply. He was my best friend, I pleaded with her. I don't care who it was, she said. 3 days is just too long. It's not normal. And you're wearing his clothes now? You're obsessed, like some kind of ambulance chaser or something. Now we were going to go through this together. Kim's memorial was attended by about 70 broken-hearted men and a smaller handful of women who she kept close. I read a piece I wrote that analogized her to a comet. The next broken-hearted men who read after me described her in the exact same way, a comet. Him and I had never met before. While it was too late to stop Kim from leaving us, there was still an unfolding emergency to protect parts of her that only her innermost circle were privy to. Kim was not an LA celebrity, but she was a notorious fixture of its underground history, now more so since she was gone. Both sincere mourners and salivating vultures came out of the woodwork, the latter who didn't acknowledge the value of privacy. We began getting harassed by a reporter who claimed to know her, claimed to love her, yet didn't know certain details about her, particulars that we were keeping under lock and key out of respect for our friend, the dead. Since the reporter didn't have all the gory details, he wanted to create a mystery. There was no mystery. She was sad. His aggressive tactics only made our death grip tighter, our disbelief bolstered. The surreal cruelty of his probing split us in half, dissociating, one hand holding her secrets, the other holding his throat. Perpetuating LA's tabloid lineage under the guise of investigative reporting, he aimed to do a first-person expose tell-all, opting to use himself as the center of her universe, since she could no longer be. Our pride was just being part of her orbit. We would not be pulled by his gravity. I'm trying to do this story to get Kim's feelings out there, but there seems to be a lot of secrecy and rumors about her death, as if people are ashamed of how she died instead of why she died. She died because she was fucking sad, bro. It is sad that not one of her friends wants to stand up for the truth, especially with all the rumors multiplying. She deserves to have her true story told, but if none of you want to clue me in, I guess no one will ever know. The truth is that she was sad and life is not really a story, bro. Shame on all of you. She had something she was trying to say. You gatekeepers want to claim her memory all for yourselves, while the rest of us have no idea what really happened. You and the rest of her so-called friends are just competing for her legacy, to speak for her, when she should be speaking for herself. She spoke, bro. Back at home, where I assumed Luna and I were going to go through it together, the walls began to close in. Miraculously, Luna snapped back from the tragedy immediately after the memorial. I, however, couldn't find the right compartment that would accommodate the immensity of Kim erasing herself. It defied physics, not just the human spirit, the opposite of a ghost. I kept wanting to call Kim to make sure Kim knew that Kim was dead, then ask Kim why I didn't see Kim at Kim's memorial. I needed more time than Luna would allow. Since she was already done grieving, she expected me to be done. This was her way of going through it together, being done with it. But the accumulation of her and I fighting every day for as long as I can remember made me realize how long I had been also mourning Luna and I saw no choice but to end it, her and I. Because not long after Kim's memorial, Luna began threatening to commit suicide daily whenever she didn't get her way, a cruel yet effective manipulation since I was still in vulnerable grieving limbo. The forbidden act of suicide was now assimilating into a last-ditch viral language in stereo, one speaker recently blown, which only made me put my ear to it closer as Luna continued to scream in my other one. I was quickly suffocating between an exit proven and an exit warning. Was she jealous of the attention I spent on Kim's passing, assuming the only way to my heart is if she too may pass? Or was this merely an inevitable ramp up, the climax after years of denial stacking, because I was scared to death to disagree with Luna because of how she would react? In our partnership, she wore the top hat, and this was her last black rabbit to pull. I was terrified to be home, a shadow of the woman I loved screaming how much she hated me because I was scared of what she might do, so she would threaten to again to see if she could break me further. There was only one way to go further. I was terrified to leave home. The shadow of the woman I loved would be alone in the dark without supervision. I was terrified to return home. The anticipation of finding her dead was a constant thought that kept me from straying too far. So when you can't stay in your body or leave in your body because you fear you might return to a body, what would you do? I tried asking myself through the shock I was in, through the membrane of coping machinations of numbness. I hate you, don't leave me. I'm too frightened to love you, I'm too frightened to leave you. And for one honest moment that I will never forget, because I vowed to never think about it again, suicide suddenly deceived me as the light and truth, where it doesn't take a saint to be a martyr.
God, Gabe, that was fucking brutal. And I mean, I think in part it was brutal because it's one of those things that happens shockingly, like regularly in misery tourism, where somebody reads just the right piece on the right night and catches you, it like hits you at the, at the point I'm tongue tied tonight, but hits you right where your brain is at that moment in time. And this is really a really fascinating piece about suicide and about the psychology of suicide and about like trying to unravel the society of suicide. And I love like the back and forth with the reporter in the middle of this piece, because there's such a strong desire, I think, on the part of people who are left behind after a suicide or after any death to try to narrativize, right?
Yeah, totally. We all do it too. I mean, I can't, I did my own part in that. It's just, no one's immune to that.
Yeah, and often the narrative is exactly as simple as you present. Like someone was depressed and they were depressed for a while and this was it, Yeah. And it's tremendous, that desire to turn it into, and the way you open by talking about how like you originally told this story as a police procedural, as a mystery, that desire to turn it into a mystery.
Yeah, I essentially was doing the same thing that the reporter was. It was this sort of, it's sort of this cross between wanting to give someone their due and turn them into some folk hero or something, and then, or some martyr, you know what I mean? And then, just being kind of scared to really face what, the truth is often something more scarier than you're prepared for.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think what really makes this piece, like takes this piece to another level though, is like the ending with the suicidal threats because like you're seeing like suicide through so many different facets, and you're seeing like first it's like suicide, the story of a suicide told as a murder mystery, and then it's like trying to come to terms with the blank hard truth of suicide and not sensationalize it. But then it goes down another level to like suicide used as emotional manipulation, right? Like
Oh God, yeah.
the exploitation of the narrative.
Right. That's exactly.
It gets so tortured and so ugly. You do a really fantastic job of like exploring all of that here. So this is good shit, is what I'm saying.
I appreciate that. Does anyone know? I use the title of a book for the dialogue in there. Does anyone know that book? I Hate You, Don't Leave Me.
No, I don't think so. I don't.
Yeah, look it up. I won't say what it is, but look it up. If it's, I didn't want to outright say what my girlfriend had at that time, but if you're curious, that title will kind of explain it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you so much, Gabe.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Yeah. Keko is up next. And I hope I got the name right this time, or at least somewhere in the right neighborhood. Are you see, I see him in the
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey,
hi.
I've got the
Yeah.
got link.
Can I go next because I really have to go with this. So
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, I can move on to the next person and come back to you.
that would be great because yeah, okay.
Yeah,
great.
no problem.
Yeah.
Let me see. So in that case, Josh is up next.
Sure. Well, he'll have plenty of time to relieve himself. So yeah, this is just the latest in a series of hyperlinked short stories that I've been slowly disseminating on the internet.
I'm going to put 3 stories in the chat. These are not the stories that Josh is about to read. These are the kind of stories leading up to this piece, correct?
Yeah, this is the 4th in the series of, I don't know, I guess it could continue indefinitely.
Is this the 90-day novel thing you and Derek are doing, or something?
No,
different?
this began earlier, and Derek did include it in his best cyber writing of 2020, the earlier parts of it. They were, at the time, I guess, 3 hyperlink stories, which I just realized with the concept actually of doing that. I didn't really think it through before doing it. And then I realized that actually when you do hyperlink series of stories, you're actually reading it from the end to the beginning. But I didn't get tripped up because my thought was always to make each of these stories stand alone, but just that if you do see the hyperlink, and lit journals aren't like journalistic outlets, so where the hyperlink is in some of them is kind of a Easter egg because it's not so clear. The websites aren't used to linking back to things, but it would just provide more context, but the stories should all stand alone.
Now,
yeah.
Of these, would you prefer I not link the one that the in progress one, the document, the Google Docs?
I don't think you gave us the Google Doc for an in progress one.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't give a Google Doc.
Okay.
So it'll just be, yeah, it's the Expat Daily Drunken X-Ray. So this one resumes where at some point after Big Dinky Energy. So I will just start. It's called Pegging. And I will say that I did read the first few paragraphs at a different reading when I was going to be serializing this. So it might sound familiar, but don't tune out because, yeah, it's mostly original. So Pegging. You're waiting for your guy. He's supposed to be here soon. Look for a gray pickup truck, his last text said. Scope out the parking lot, see nothing, check your phone again. A few minutes go by like this. You're sweating, and not just because you've rushed over here on your fixed gear bike. Something about the brevity of this dude's text suggests that he doesn't like to be kept waiting around. That you will never really get along with anyone who drives a pickup truck is one of your strongest held convictions. The only friend of yours who drove one ended up fucking your girlfriend at the time. But you're not here to make friends, and you no longer have a girlfriend. The truck pulls up at the other end of the parking lot. Your guy is already stepping down from his lifted Ford F-150 as you pedal up. Here's your stuff, he says, handing you the bag. There's no one else around. It's a public holiday, and without the usual customer shopping for groceries, you two are alone. It's less shameful this way. Check it out for yourself, your guy encourages. You size up the merchandise. Your guy has come through. He's brought exactly what he promised. The 5 Hot Wheels toys are just as advertised on Kijiji earlier this week. Nice, you tell him. The corners of the cardboard packages that they're in, these are known as cards, aren't nicked at all. And the plastic blisters, those are the little transparent bubbles attached to the cards that hold the miniature cars in place, are mint too. No cracks. Serious collectors care about these details. That's just one of the things you've learned since you, a grown-ass man, started collecting dinky cars a while back. Packaging matters less to you than some. In general, you open your toys. You're just that kind of man. California-based toy company Mattel produces so many of these things that any hit to value incurred from opening them is usually marginal anyways. According to a 2018 article in Car and Driver magazine, 519 million Hot Wheels roll off Mattel's assembly line each year, which works out to a rate of 16.5 per second. In the time it takes to read that stat, 198 new Hot Wheels have come into the world. So yeah, there's no reason to treat Hot Wheels like a rare and precious commodity. Just ask David Tilley. David Tilley only collects cars from Matchbox, but his example is instructive. He's known in hobbyist circles for opening every single model. Tilley calls it the die-cast liberation movement. One time at a toy convention, he cracked open an incredibly rare example right in front of everyone. Then he gleefully raced it down an orange plastic track as a bunch of middle-aged men looked on horrified. You aspire to channel his energy. David fucking Tilley. Like anything, Hot Wheels has a language. Soup is short for Super Treasure Hunt, a rare variation of a regular model, or mainline, differentiated by glossier Spectra Flame paint, a small TH printed somewhere on the body, and rubber wheels called real riders. Scalpers are people like your guy who sell stuff on the secondary market. Peg warmers are models that, for whatever reason, just don't sell. They remain on the pegs, those hooks that retailers use to display Hot Wheels, for months. Like any language that you encounter, you want to make this one your own. So you've coined a term for whenever you're going hunting for Hot Wheels. You say you're going pegging. It'd be an inside joke if you knew anybody else who collects Hot Wheels. You decide to keep in touch with your guy. Working as a team covers more territory. Keep him posted on which stores you visit and what they've got in stock, and he'll do the same. To find your first soup, you've got to establish your turf. Such partnerships among collectors aren't unheard of. Some leave calling cards to signal that they've already hit a particular store. Could be a sticky note saying first, or a random toy from another display hung conspicuously with the cars. Some dude in the States is said to leave a fresh pair of children's underwear on the pegs. You're pretty sure he's from Florida. Too bad this habit can't be indulged in shadows and after hours, but that's kind of the point. This pursuit is incongruous with parties and bars, might help stop the daily drinking. The plan? Replace the empty bottles in your recycling bin with discarded toy packaging. Do's and don'ts. Do ask for a gift receipt to avoid unnecessary embarrassment at the checkout. Do wait from a safe distance until any kids around are done with the Hot Wheels display. Parents might otherwise mistake you for a child predator. You may or may not know this from experience. Don't bother seeking customer service. On the point of customer service, it's a few months back. You're at a Walmart in the East End, scouting the toy aisle. Nothing new. But there's a skid nearby, and a middle-aged woman is working through the boxes piled on it, opening them and stocking the product to the shelves. She's taking her time, and you get it. The first decade of your adult life was spent toiling at minimum wage jobs too. But a few cases are clearly marked with the Mattel logo. She hasn't gotten to them yet, so what's the harm in politely asking if any new Hot Wheels are coming out? Not today, she replies, slicing open a box of Barbies with what seems like subdued violence. Check tomorrow. The fine print on the Mattel boxes is close enough to read, but the store is closing in 10 minutes. You're getting pegged, bitch. It soon becomes clear what went down. You come across a thread on the Walmart subreddit titled "The Worst Hot Wheels Collectors in the World." In it, retail employees list all the obnoxious things collectors have done to them. One was accused of cherry picking all the soups or super treasure hunts for himself. Same dude also saw a fist fight break out over an empty box. That was before a collector figured out his wife worked in the electronics department and tried to get chummy with her just to get closer to him now that he was heading up the toy section. He also witnessed men purchasing hundreds of dinkies just to trigger the automated inventory system into ordering some new cases from the distributor. When the fresh merchandise arrived, they'd pick over what they wanted and return a shopping cart full of old product, creating overstock problems. "I'm having flashbacks," one reply to the thread reads. "Those fucks would rip open the boxes off the pallets looking for cars at my store. They had no shame." That, you know, is called pallet raiding. The comments go on and on. Reading the thread, it's obvious that the woman in the store must have thought you were one of those guys. This hobby takes you all over the city. You start keeping a spreadsheet of Walmart shipping routines. They're not that hard to figure out. Return enough times, on enough different days, at enough different times, and patterns emerge. It's Thursday evening, so that means you're headed to the Dufferin Mall. You're crossing the bridge over the train tracks that run by your place, bisecting Toronto from Pickering to Union Station downtown. The railway overpass offers a cutaway view of the core to the west, its skyline looking like a microchip that exploded. Dark clouds are a rug on the city. Are the formations altocumulus, nimbostratus? You've become an amateur meteorologist since your guy told you that bad weather makes for good Hot Wheels hauls. Fewer scalpers are willing to head out if it looks like rain. Not far from your destination, you wipe out. You're not sure how it happens. You've barely had anything to drink. Medical attention is required. It's a quiet night in the ER at St. Joe's, so it doesn't take long to see a doctor. He asks what happened, and you give him way too much information. You provide an inventory of everything you've imbibed. Again, not much. You're always too honest with medical professionals, like you fear their anatomical knowledge gives them X-ray vision or something. As the doctor sews up your face, he asks what you do for a living. You tell him that you write for Vice magazine. Makes sense, he says. You can't believe you've never thought to check hospital gift shops for Hot Wheels. Parking lots could be beautiful. You know they're bad for the planet, the watershed damage, the carbon footprint, how they should all be repurposed for social housing. A trade publication once commissioned you to write a 2,500-word feature on this. As research, you even read The High Cost of Free Parking by Donald Shoup. In it, the UCLA professor argues against all the ways in which we subsidize the convenience of motorists to the detriment of society. It's 700 pages long. And you don't even have a license. But when you're in a parking lot, the kind endemic to the big box stores in the city's former boroughs, the sky stretches unimpeded over perfect symmetry. Curbs and parallel lines. You're gripped with anticipation that's visceral. Every time you pull up to a Walmart, you could be on the verge of your first soup or catching a new case drop. It's all potential. Like when you were edging your girlfriend for hours at a Howard Johnson one weekend before she was your ex-girlfriend. Except this time, no girlfriend is required. In fact, your single status is all but guaranteed now. An empty can rattles past in the wind. You've been waiting for a storm to blow over before biking home, and it's finally clearing up. Spilled oil makes rainbows in the puddles. Parking lots could be beautiful. The best blowjob of your life was in the passenger seat of a silver Volvo C70. That's what your ex-girlfriend drove. Hot Wheels hasn't made one of them yet, but you did find a Volvo 850 Estate. You snapped up doubles of the casting the second you had the chance. Serious collectors tend to focus on the more realistic looking castings after all. So it is with your collection. An 86 Monte Carlo SS, just like the one your great-grandmother used to run errands in with you as a kid, is sitting on your desk. There are exotics, American muscle, and Japanese imports stowed in the plastic storage containers that are slowly taking over the apartment. But your favorites are the utterly mundane, the mid-size sedans, station wagons, and crossover SUVs. You like the thought of some child playing with a miniature Toyota Prius. There seems to be no better metaphor for late capitalism. Pretty much the only things you don't fuck with are military vehicles and cop cars. Oh, and obviously pickup trucks. This obsession becomes a family affair. After mentioning it to your mom, she begins texting you pictures of Hot Wheels displays she finds at grocery stores. She's been having a hard time since your sister started abusing painkillers again, dropped out of school, and moved in with a guy named Ambrose who organizes drum circles and keeps reptiles. At your mom's place for dinner one night, not long after she finds out about Lizard Man, she says, "I may have lost my little girl, but it looks like I've got my little boy back." At least someone appreciates your Hot Wheels collection. One collector you follow online insists that his collection is a form of color therapy. Desperate for an excuse to explain your own behavior, you subscribe to this view. In truth, you aren't sure what holds your interest. You suspect it has to do with scale, of reducing something to its purest form. Few know more about that than Ryu Asada. The key lead product designer with Hot Wheels is known for his uncanny mastery of proportion. Like a writer, though, he can't help but put something of himself into his meticulously constructed interpretations of reality. Take the '89 Porsche 944 Turbo he designed for 2020. There's a stethoscope visible in the rear hatch. It's a nod to his doctor, who owns the same car in real life. Ryu Asada often puts Easter eggs in his work, obscure little coded references to his full-scale life. The first release of the Honda Prelude that he tooled shares the silver and red color scheme and license plate his mom's had. Other Hot Wheels designers include personal touches, but they don't hit you the same. The '75 Datsun Sunny truck, released in the third installment of the Japan Historic series, has an easel in the cargo bed. Designer Mark Jones put it there because, well, he likes to paint outside. That's ironic, you think, since he clearly lacks Asada's artistic vision. You think about what Easter egg you'd include if Mattel asked you to design a Volvo C70. If parents were upset when Matchbox released a hearse, they definitely won't appreciate what you've got in mind for the passenger seat of a Volvo C70. On March 23rd, 2021, Hot Wheels designer Ryu Asada dies at 42. Cancer. The doctor who owned the Porsche was an oncologist. You text a couple of your friends with the news. Pat offers a one-word response. Designer. He writes it in quotes. Your phone buzzes a few days later, and it's your guy. He tells you to get over to Walmart at Golden Mile. He had to leave, but there's an unopened case on the sales floor. Your chance at a soup, your first one. But after what happened outside the Dufferin Mall a while back, you have second thoughts. You probably shouldn't be getting on your bike right now. There will be other opportunities. It's all just a numbers game. More than 130 new Hot Wheels designs make their debut annually. And some of those will inevitably become soups. To try and get some idea of your odds, you use your press credentials and email Mattel about distribution. You ask how many retailers they distributed Hot Wheels to in Toronto, Ontario, Canada in the year 2020. I realize this is a rather specific request, you write. The comms person for Mattel never gets back to you. Maybe you shouldn't have told him you write for Vice. It's obvious that there's something else you haven't figured out about Hot Wheels collecting yet. These toys aren't going to save you. You're just emptying the recycling bin more often these days.
I didn't want to interrupt you. Is that the end?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Josh, this is your fucking magnum opus, Josh.
Thanks.
No, it's fantastic because there are some pieces of writing where the author is able to capture everything that's great about their writing, able to capture, like, put all of the skills that they have available to them at play in a single piece. Like, Nabokov does that in Pale Fire, right? He shows himself as a great poet. He shows himself as a really talented, like, satirist of, like, the mores and expectations of formal writing. He shows himself as, like, a brilliant craftsman of, like, of unreliable narrators, right? Every aspect of what makes a great piece of Josh writing is on display here. It's got the brutally self-deprecating humor, and it has that really kind of candid sadness to it. But it's also one of the few pieces that you've read here that shows your skill as a journalist too. The way you, like, weave in elements that would normally be included in, like, an article about Hot Wheels collecting, right? Like the stuff about the designer dying of cancer, and the stuff about, like, the weird quirks of this habitual behavior, of this obsession, and the way you weave all of that together perfectly so no part of it feels out of place. It's fucking brilliant. Josh, it's fucking fantastic. And that ending is, it's so sad, Josh. The ending's so sad. It's great. It's fantastic.
Thanks so much. I like that you picked up on the journal. Like, basically, the story has footnotes, and I felt that they interrupted the reading. And I wanted the story to stand without the footnotes, but there are footnotes and links and a journalistic approach. And actually, when I was writing it, one of the challenges was I wanted this set in 2017, but Ryu Asada did die on that date, and the story had to be set at this point, and that confused the narrative of even the previous. Anyways, it was just, but I wanted that to be a part of it. Not that all of it's true, of course, by any stretch, but I wanted it to kind of exist. I wanted to have the parameters of that, of a world to tether it to, and then whatever I do with that, just because it was kind of like, I guess that's like why some people like writing in poetic forms, because there's some limitation, right? But it's like you still can do whatever you want within that. But I like that you thought it was journalistic, because that was one of the things. It started out with a concept of just a list of facts about Hot Wheels, and then the one fact that you haven't realized is that this isn't the solution to your problem. And I like that idea. And it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. And the little things that happened, like even the very short chapter that's one sentence about, because I think I was pausing in between. I think you get a sense of where these little sections start and end. But I was at the hospital. My girlfriend had a pretty serious surgery this week, and there was nothing to do, though. I mean, it doesn't make you a better boyfriend if you're, waiting and crying. I'm there. I'll be there when she gets out. And I saw the hospital gift shop, and I'm like, fuck, why didn't I think to do that? So I did go in there, and I texted Derek about it, and I was like, okay, that's a good line for the story. But so it kept growing. But yeah, so anyways, thanks for, I really, yeah, I'm glad I felt good about it, but obviously it seems like it wasn't delusion. So that's always nice.
No, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic piece, Josh. I'm eager to see it in print and linked up with all the other pieces in the series.
Yeah, I
And
really dig the like William mentioned the journalistic element of it. It feels it's very personal in a way. It almost feels like an ethnography, an ethnography of like this community, this subset of like people, type of guys. It's really like it feels very personal in like a revealing way. That reveals also the larger parts of and gives narrative to the larger parts of like this community, I guess, whatever. It is really interesting. And there was a couple lines. The one specifically, the designer in quotation marks one really killed me.
Oh yeah, that's true. Pat did say that, and fuck Pat.
Oh man, that like you just have a knack for capturing like the saddest parts of
Thanks.
of the human experience, I guess.
yeah,
I don't, and just in such a way that makes them funny and makes it also really revealing. Like I said, it was really awesome.
Thanks. One of my only reservations was like, I think maybe some people might wonder, well, really, I have a little section on why he started, the drinking, but the childhood stuff is in the story it's linked back to. And I'm still grappling with, I think if it all appeared in print sequentially, I would be fine with this story and could even cut a bit. But I was starting to break my rule a bit of making it stand on its own, because like my ideal form of this story would have no explanation, because you would be in big dinky energy. I mean, that explains the return to innocence. But I hope it wasn't too repetitive in that respect. But that's just something I'm thinking about.
Are you thinking that eventually all of these kind of hyperlink pieces are going to go together in one volume? Is that the hope?
Yeah, this one now, each section is going to be a different page, a different chapter with a title, almost like a poem that's linked, but the other stories are still linked to it. And yeah, I mean, the idea is that the person I'm working with, I mean, they want to see a new draft because it's changed so much, the book, I mean. But yeah, the idea is that there would also be a print version, which is fine because that can be different, right? I mean, it's different medium. So I'm trying to make it work all online in a link back way, but also I would like to have it in print. Yeah, that way. The only other thing I wanted to get a comment on, and before letting I imagine that urination, if that's still going on, that's a real problem. No, he's here. Is that it was second person because the previous ones were second person, and I wanted to write this in first person, but then I actually ended up liking it in second person because I think it's less interesting. It was just me. If it's trying to drag you and you're being dragged through this obscure world, I actually kind of like the second person, but I wanted to see what you thought, William, or Rudy, or anything like that.
No, I mean, the second person 100% worked because it was invisible to me. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is a second person there. I was like, sometimes that can be obvious or distracting. And it didn't even click in my brain, like, and I think that, no, I mean, I'm not going to belabor the point. I think it fucking worked. Yeah, I absolutely think it fucking worked.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah, I think the second person definitely puts it in that realm of like closer to like I said, ethnography, or that kind of, you feel like you're riding with a dinky guy. Like that's literally
yeah.
like you're the dinky guy, and the way you relate like certain feelings and juxtapose certain things, it feels really like almost like a narrative of like kind of like a montage, I guess, of events from your life, kind of put together, and events from you as in the reader's life. You can sense like how things are connected. I think the second person does help with that.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad then it didn't drag, because as I was about 2,500 words into this, I was like, oh, geez, what am I exposing people to? But thank you.
No, it was fantastic, Josh. As I said, I think it's one of the best pieces you've read here, and I don't say that lightly,
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try and send it to X-Ray. They're ready. They know because they like the first one. So we'll see. If not them, I hopefully someone picks it up. But thanks again.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Josh. Keko.
Hi. Yeah.
Hey, I just put the links to the poem back in the chat.
Great, thanks. Sorry about that earlier. Give me just a moment and I'll start.
You're just a little muffled. You might want to switch to your other device. Okay.
Okay, you hear me all right? Just a moment.
Perfectly.
Yeah, great. I'll be reading 4 poems, but first two was actually just one the first time I read it. So the theory poem, it became 2 poems. So I'll just start reading it. So, so let's start. It's not her fault. Theory was a toy built between beatings and preachings. Theory is a toy bought on a boring afternoon. Theory smirks at theory. Theory smirks at theory enviously. Theory smirks at theory's grave. At midnight, theory is afraid and timidly asks for theory's advice. Unable to hear her, she digs up the bones, tries to assemble a golem. In vain, threatening, death never opened its mouth onto her. Her skin is a peach in the sun plucked. And the second one is, she was young once. After Keko Priateljs, it's not her fault. She was Carol Buque and she was Angela Molina. She is Fernando Rey. Her skin is a peach in the sun plucked. Wrinkles tremble a mantra, rebel rumble roar, and by sheer magic, the worms inside turn into butterflies flutter off to another field. And the other 2 poems are quite fresh, actually. So the first one I wrote it 2 days ago, and the second one was written yesterday. So let's start. So they're obviously subject to changes. So an interior and an exterior night meet in boredom. Shadows of forgotten objects surprise me in my room. Alcohol, my midnight coffee. Once said, all good things come to those who burst. It's not his to care about the background movement, nor he's ever scared as I am now. Be calm, the shadows say. You'll get drunk tomorrow with friends and acquaintances, and many asses will be there to grab and mock. Refrain from masturbation. A worn out pen turning into a worm squeezes out the panic sperm, stupid sperm, forsaken one, scribbles a plethora of nonsense. With the wish to just leave one day and never come back. A slow suicide by cigarettes, in silence, wailing, for the possibility of a drunk redneck with white socks in his eye sockets, with an eclipse in each orbit. All the grand leaders were grand bullies. No diagnosis, please. Just portray the most dinosaur privateer voyage my birth chart has ever ventured into. The ugly sorceress clung to my lost beauty like a demon. If you're there, God, I'm so sorry I had to settle with. Satan's always been there. The tears are little gestures, liquid gestures. Passerines sip the will from my navel. Sorry, I'm a bit dry. So the last one. Struggle for a dash of sun between plants and me. I live in a pretty little flat in Zagreb. In autumn, in the corners, several plants catch the sun that pokes amidst the buildings for about an hour. I instinctively move and overshadow them. If they don't get the sun, they'll die. If I don't, I won't. My plants can't kill themselves, nor move. They might not even know the sea doubles the sun. Yellow and blue is the formula for green. And that's it, yeah.
These are fucking fantastic. I really like what you've done with the first two poems. I remember you reading that poem a few weeks ago, and I was blown away by it that time, but I really love what you've done with them now. First of all, that theory poem, which I was really thrilled with initially, is an even more effective and scathing like response to theory, right? And I love the way the second poem now comes and offers is in conversation with that first one, but in a really interesting way where it almost seems to offer an alternative to theory. Like the first poem is so abstract and is so much about like the impotence of theory, right? And and then that second poem kind of comes back and answers theory with pure art and pure beauty, you know, and with pure magic, right? Like the sense that like literature is better undissected, maybe, right? Like being able to instead have that kind of magical like transformation occur and not to try to take it apart and figure out how the wheels and bobs fit together. And the second two poems are just fucking beautiful. There's just such gorgeous imagery, just such vivid, vivid like images presented in those poems. I'm sorry, while I was talking, my cat was scratching behind me and it was distracting me. But these fucking rock, is what I'm saying.
Thanks, William. The second the second theory poem. Sorry, the second theory poem. It starts with a kind of a parasitic homage to Luis Buñuel. So it's anyway, never mind. Thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. Next up tonight is Jesse. Are you with us, Jesse? In just 1 second, I'm going to do something about the Castley stuff first.
I'm here. What I wanted to do tonight was a little strange, and I'm not sure I have the expertise to do this, but I wanted to show the cartoons that I had published by Misery Tourism, which I'm really happy about. I'm really grateful to William and Rudy for taking them. I don't know how to do this, so I'm asking for their help in going to the site and sharing the screen, if that's possible. Can somebody do that?
Yeah, I think Rudy is, I just put the link in the chat, and I think Rudy said he would screen share. I may have to give him permission to, though.
I think I can do it. I'm just getting the link posted up on the thing here.
And I wasn't planning on spending a long time here. I just wanted to kind of go through the 6 cartoons just to kind of show them off very briefly.
Sure.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna screen share and then put it full screen, and I'll just pause it. I know it tends to advance, so I'm gonna pause it and then just let me know when you're ready to move to the next one.
Okay.
Cool. Let me get this in. I have so many windows open, so I'm gonna get this in like a dedicated window here, so you don't see all the other bullshit.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I have a little bit of trepidation because I know Misery Tourism doesn't necessarily accept poem or accept cartoons. So I was again really grateful and but yet aware that this isn't necessarily the typical content that Misery Tourism does.
You know, we were actually enthusiastic to have them because Misery Tourism was never conceived of as like a lit site, right? It kind of evolved into one, but it started with tabletop games. And then when we kind of relaunched it, we had the idea that we'd offer like a diversity of different content, right? That we'd offer some fiction and poetry and also some articles. And we actually have an art and multimedia section up on the site, but it's so rare that we get to add to that section, you know, and these were just such a perfect fit that
Yeah, no, these are absolutely amazing. And I'm gonna start the screen share. Is everybody cool with that?
fantastic.
Hey, can everybody see that?
Perfectly.
It's a little.
Rudy, is there a way to get the get rid of the top bar there so that the comic takes up not so much the Misery Tourism top bar, but the
Yeah,
browser has like
yeah,
I don't
I'm
know if
kind of
yeah.
kind of full screen it here if I can. There we go. I think that might show it all. How is that? Is that all?
Yeah,
That's better. Thank you.
Great. Take it away, Jesse.
Well, I'm not going to talk much. I'm definitely not going to narrate them or read them. I just wanted to kind of show them enough so that people can read them. This originally started with another cartoon in here where they're looking at a runner in a park. It's a sort of unnamed city. And I wanted these two characters to be really dipshits that comment on everybody around them in the city, especially not in this case, they're commenting on a homeless guy. But in the other ones, they tend to be kind of misogynistically making fun of women or saying things about women. You can advance to the next one. This one, in New York City and other cities in upstate New York, there's Amish people, and I just imagined them getting some comments from people. Okay, you can advance to the next one.
Jesse, I just noticed the Legend of Zelda shirt in this one, and I don't know what it is about that, but that's such a great detail, especially given like how nasty their behavior is.
Right. This guy's got a Mario shirt. This is in a coffee shop. They're just being dickheads. You can advance to the next one. This was the original one that started the whole thing off. I felt like I put the most detail into this one, and it kind of like sets the tone for the two characters being what they are. And they're going to the park to judge women's asses and not really being aware of what they're doing. They're just being, like I said, assholes. Okay, you can advance it. This one, they're kind of making fun of the woman's feet by saying that she is actually the daughter of Bigfoot and that Bigfoot's pullout game is tragic. And again, the detail in the background. Okay, now if you can go down to the one that stays by itself. This one's called Insomnia Rotisserie Merit Badge, and as you can see, it's a woman on a really hot night who's trying to sleep, but she tossing and turning to the point where her mattress is kind of, the blanket's coming off her mattress. And she's dreaming or somehow imagining, or maybe she's just like the victim of these sort of forces which are making her toss and turn. And up in the corner, there's sort of an imaginary couple of Boy Scouts turning a chicken. One little detail, if you look at her nightgown close enough, there's little chicks on the nightgown. And then if you look at the painting up above the dresser drawer, there's a chicken. So there's little, I wanted to have little motifs of chickens through the whole thing. And that's it. I'm really happy that this is being put up there. I have other comics that I want to do. And I appreciate everybody watching my little slideshow. Thank you very much.
Awesome, man.
Jesse,
Yeah.
Somebody's, I think I've got to mute somebody's mic because there was some background stuff. But yeah, Jesse, I really, looking at them again now, I'm so struck by all the little details in the crowd scenes, especially, and the humanity that you give to the characters who aren't like central to the comics. And I think it really works in the Metalhead Dave and Max ones, because if all of the different people in the background and in the foreground were basically just like featureless stick figures, like they kind of are in a lot of comics, you would get the sense that, oh, these guys are the only real people in the world. And it would end up feeling like a Kevin Smith movie or something, where it's like, oh, these two guys are wisecracking and you kind of like sympathize with them. But the fact that everyone in those comics besides them is very clearly a human being, like forces you to see these guys as a bunch of real fucking assholes, right? And the shading on, so there was one of them, there's a guy in the foreground and the shading on his eyes, they're so dark and swollen, and it like gives you this sense that this guy has this whole other life that he's living, you know? But the one that really fucking blew me away was the Insomnia Merit Badge one. Back in the, I don't know if you were at all into the like alt web comic scene back in the early to mid 2000s, but there were a couple of like really like dark, kind of bleakly funny, like surrealist web comics like the Perry Bible Fellowship and Pictures for Sad Children and A Lesson is Learned, but the Damage is Irreversible. And the Insomnia Merit Badge one has all the best elements of that kind of dark surrealist comic humor, you know, and it's just really well realized. So I don't know, these fucking blew me away, I guess.
Thank you. When I sent the email to you about these, you did respond with those, and I looked them up. And I looked at them, and I've never heard of them before, so that was kind of cool to kind of be exposed to a new thing and see some connections and things like that. I like putting things in the background, and I like trying to make every person in the background and stuff like a viable, credible character. Or I mean, I don't live in a city, but I just remember going to cities like New York City, which is 3 hours away, and really getting caught up in people watching and seeing all the different diversity and variety of people. So anyway, thank you very much, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, sure.
There's that person again.
Sorry, what was that, Josh?
There's that person again. I heard that mic noise.
Oh, that might have that.
Oh, that was my. I just got a text. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Okay.
oh.
I'll mute myself.
No problem. So yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. And Sam is up next.
One second.
Sure, absolutely.
I love Sam's Twitter shit disturbing.
Sam is a brilliant Twitter provocateur.
It's admirable. That's the quality I admire most in a man. Unfortunately, nobody really cares what I think about a man, but still.
Okay, this I read. I'll put it in chat. I read an early version of this like a month ago. Let's see. It's called My Lived Experience. It starts off with a quote from John Donne. I have not been so pitifully tired with any vanity as with silly old men exclaiming against these times and extolling their own. Alas, they betray themselves, for if the times be changed, their manners have changed them. From John Donne's Juvenalia. My friend is millennial. She was telling me that her kid hit his head really bad, that he had to go to the doctor and get an x-ray to see if he had a concussion, but he was fine. He just got a goose egg. I hit my head when I was his age, when I was a kid, but I never got a goose egg. I got a scar where my hair doesn't grow. When I was his age, I thought goose eggs only happen in cartoons. I think that's why I got a scar where hair won't grow instead of a goose egg, because I believe goose eggs only happen in cartoons. I hit my head doing cool tricks off a ramp on a skateboard and falling. I never landed any of them. I don't remember how my friend, who is a millennial, I don't remember how her kid almost got a concussion. Her kid isn't a Zoomer. He's the generation after that will be better off than them. I don't talk to many Zoomers, but they do a lot of pills and have sex badly. And they're angry about pornography. When I was their age, I didn't have sex badly because of all the pills I did. I hit my head doing cool tricks off a ramp on a skateboard and falling, never landing any of them, and I did it without getting goose eggs. Then I wasted time lurking on tech forums instead of independently researching why porn is bad. I learned how to record an album with software and how online music publishing would change the record industry. It did change the record industry because artists are now poorer than they were before. Good. Zoomers do a lot of pills and call those pills by the IUPAC chemical name for the active compound in the drug, like they know what that name means. Nobody needs to call drugs that unless they're in a lab and making the compounds. When it's drugs outside of a lab making them, the only name you need is the one that tells you how it gets you fucked up. Call Adderall amphetamine salts and name the isomer, and differentiate between the different types of amphetamine salts, like you can tell a difference between the effects in a blind taste test. Anytime someone tells me that X brand of amphetamines felt different than Y brand of amphetamines, less pure or less clean, I catalog them as being retarded, and I never remove that label. It colors all my interactions with them afterwards. I wish them to OD. Zoomers love drugs so much their dicks don't work. They are so good at telling the methyl or ethyl group's effect on a drug's effect on their own psychology and biochemistry, because they took so many of them and pursued this fine-grained psychopharmaceutical self-knowledge to the point that their dicks don't work. They hate porn too, because it reminds them of their non-functioning sexual organs and that they are bad at sex. They also like anime, also for those same reasons. People that are good at sex can innately tell when someone is bad at it and avoid them. The aughts and the ises align with people who cannot fuck, especially if they are Zoomers. Their situation is the way it ought to be. They take drugs, which they refer to by the IUPAC chemical names, in order to make themselves blind to this constitutive fact of reality, which is asserted to them at all times by reality when they are not fucked during quests for self-knowledge of their journey to discover new types of elves to catalog themselves as having, deforming their mind to the point where they can find their mind interesting. My friend's kid is not old enough to do drugs. He cannot pronounce IUPAC chemical names either, I don't think, but I haven't asked him. His memes aren't very funny. I understand how he finds them funny. He showed me one. It was a picture of a cartoon character and some captions like us millennials put on the Courage Wolf. That meme wasn't funny either. None of them ever are after a year. I don't get Zoomer memes or late millennial memes, selectuals, book quotes over random images, selectuals. How about you select my nuts and gargle them, faggot? Big mistake using that if a millennial reads this. We made saying it against the rules. Zoomers use it sometimes though. The baby boomers started off with the sexual revolution, which let gay people fuck without lying about being gay, and passed the ball to Gen X, who ran point. Gen X then set up an alley-oop to millennials, who slam dunked, making saying faggot against the rules so hard that the backboard shattered, and now both teams are waiting on a replacement for it so they can continue playing the game. Zoomers later walked on court and saw the broken backboard, so Zoomers decided to just play saying faggot basketball at half court amongst themselves. That's why they say the word faggot sometimes. And millennials and Gen X can't play because we have too many people to play anything besides full court saying faggot basketball. And we can't just kick a bunch of people off our teams to continue playing and act like it's the same continuous game. So we are waiting for the backboard to get replaced. And while we are waiting, we are getting called faggots by Zoomers, playing half court saying faggot basketball amongst themselves. And since Zoomers aren't employed, we can't get them fired from anywhere for saying it. We are getting called faggots by Zoomers and can't do anything about it besides acknowledge in our hearts that it is true. But millennials are raising the generation that will get the Zoomers fired for calling us faggots. We just have to wait a while. Children are where our hopes for a better future always rest. The children of Zoomers, if Zoomers have any, will then call our children faggots. And then our grandchildren will get the children of the Zoomers fired from their jobs, and so on until the end of time. My friend is a millennial, and the worst word her kid with the cartoon goose egg on his head says is butthole. Saying butthole isn't bad. He just says butthole so much that if he said something like faggot once in a while, then that would be better than saying butthole all the time. Still, he won't get fired for saying butthole all the time, but I wouldn't hire him. I would hire someone who said faggot once in a while, though. I could leverage that against them when they demand a raise. I could lure them saying faggot over their head when I want something done. When I was a kid, I was calling people faggots and watching cartoons and falling off a skateboard, hitting my head without getting goose eggs because goose eggs only happen in cartoons. Later, I was doing drugs and having sex and still calling people faggot, similar to Zoomers actually. I guess we have more in common than I thought. Then I stopped calling people that because millennials decided it was against the rules. It was us that did it and improved the world for gay people, and not Gen X or boomers, but us, who solidified it being okay for gay people to fuck and not have to lie about it. It wasn't boomers, though they started it. It was not Gen X, who were just boomers who made the assist. It was us who slam dunked, making saying faggot against the rules so hard that the game is on hold. Halftime music has been playing for roughly 11 years now, while we wait on a replacement and get called faggots by Zoomers. It was us, not the boomers or Generation X, who are the new boomers, because they're out of touch with everything millennials do, like how millennials are out of touch with everything Zoomers do. Our music is now playing for halftime, also. I won't say what band. Our musicians are mostly living, though. Baby boomers' best musicians are all dead except for Eric Clapton, who is racist. Baby boomer musicians all died from drugs, but Gen X musicians all killed themselves, probably so they wouldn't have to become the new boomers. Gen X all have decent jobs, and if they don't, they are still boomers, even if they're artists or writers or musicians or homeless. If you're Gen X, there's no difference between being a musician or homeless and working in an office, to us millennials and to Zoomers at least. You are the bourgeoisie and deserve to be decapitated by Zoomers and millennials who read Marx and Lenin on WikiQuote and who live in the suburbs. Gen X is lazy and they think David Cross is funny even though he isn't. Neither is Bill Hicks. Tool is also bad. Tool is the one Gen X band that didn't kill themselves, so Gen X have rallied around Tool. They're like Eric Clapton, but for Gen X. Fans of Tool and fans of Eric Clapton are the same. Tool fans are like Zoomers because they use the IUPAC chemical names for drugs, even though they don't understand why the drug has that name. Even if they took organic chemistry, they would still use the name, even though there is no reason to use the IUPAC chemical name outside of a lab, just because a fat as fuck, smelly man wearing a black hoodie calls it, left parentheses, 6A right, comma, 9 right, right parentheses, dash N, comma, N, dash diethyl, dash 7, dash methyl, dash 4, 6, 6A, 7, 8, 9, dash hexahydroindolo, dash left bracket 4, 3, dash FG, right bracket, quinolone, dash 9, dash carboxamide. Doesn't mean that the chemist from Kid Charlemagne made it, but they have done too many drugs to realize this. Other than that, they're the same as fans of Eric Clapton and Monterey Pop Festival. Tool concerts are like Monterey Pop Festival, except the audience is all fat people in black sweatshirts and everyone smells a slightly different type of bad than hippies do. Audience members will also explain the Fibonacci sequence to you. They will point out the IUPAC nomenclature factoids about their drugs to each other. Anyone who can recite the most IUPAC drug names in their most complete forms during the Tool show to the most people gets to fuck the hottest girl within an earshot. It is a mating ritual in which they acquire a Zoomer girlfriend who they say is mature for her age. Those girlfriends are mature for their age because they act like millennials, except in regards to their using the IUPAC nomenclature of their recreational drugs of choice, and in regards to them having sex with Tool fans. Soon these girls will be replaced by the generation after Zoomer, and they will also be disliked by the other members of their generation. They will be disliked for doing everything I just talked about. Tool fans will eventually become old and die. In summation, to millennials, Gen X is boomer, and to Zoomers, they, Gen X, are boomers and faggots. So millennials and Gen X and the children of millennials all have solidarity against the Zoomers, and that we are all faggots. The Zoomers made a bad call bringing back calling people faggot. Since they're outnumbered 3-to-1, alternating generations included, they are at best 1-to-1. Gen X also didn't like being called faggot either, but millennials are the ones who finally made it against the rules, and now us millennials and our kids get to dominate the Zoomers with Gen X by getting them fired from their jobs for calling people faggots when they reach an employable age. Because millennials made it against the rules, that's why I don't call people faggot anymore unless it's in a group chat and we are talking about Gen X or people that watch anime. Finally, goose eggs only happen in cartoons. That's it.
Oh my God. Sam, you did read a version of this before and it killed me then. And you left just enough time for me to forget about it so it could kill me again. Oh my God. The extended faggot basketball metaphor is just every time I hear it, it just fucking drops me.
I was proud of the basketball metaphor. It might be my favorite part.
Yeah, the basketball thing definitely conjured hard an image of like NBA Jam from the 90s, like the dude just dunking and fucking shattering the basket or the backboard while like the cameras flash in the background and shit. But
and the basketball turns into a huge ball of fire.
Fireball. No, but one thing, like I must have missed this before. I must not have been in the one where you read this, but like the way your logic twists and the way like it's alliterative and twists on itself, like it's very Lewis Carroll type, like lyrical nonsense or what do they call it, like literary nonsense, I guess it is. That it's very much like that, and it's like a dirty version of Lewis Carroll, which I really that's like I'm here for that. That is so cool. And the scientific stuff is really like interesting how you parallel that with everything else going, like the IUPAC names and shit, and that sequence with the long sequence with the chemical name that fucking killed me. That was just absolutely nuts.
I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, but whatever.
It doesn't matter. But no, that killed me. Like, oh my God.
No, it was fucking fantastic. Thanks again, Sam.
Thank you.
Michael is up next.
Cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, pretty clearly.
Cool. Yeah, let me just share this. So I think I read like an early version of this months ago.
Oh, Michael, you don't want me to put the link into the Twitter, right?
Yeah, I haven't published this, and I'm maybe gonna submit it around. I haven't decided. So in the interest of, I guess that, but this is the latest version of it. Yeah, I keep like working on it and then binning it and then fishing it out of the proverbial trash and continue picking at it. So I'm just gonna read the new version, and yeah, if anybody has any thoughts, they'd be appreciated. So it's called The Escape Artists. We weave through the highway's hypnotic dark, an hour or so south of the White Mountains. I need to check the directions, I say. Do it, says the character, the end of a pistol raised to my face. My phone drinks power from the console. The screen's pearl light washes us as I open the map app. There's still a while to go, I say. I should explain the character. I was half awake on the couch while some streaming service sitcom misted happiness in my direction when it happened. The sudden grind of fans inside my laptop, the ripples in the screen, how a person, no, a shade of someone crawled naked through the screen and thumped onto the floor. My instinct was to bring them clothes. Their skin reminded me of dust as it floats in a sun-stroked room, or how the air seems full just before it rains. No light? The character asked as they dressed. I need to replace the ceiling bulbs, I said. Where's your bedroom? I pointed to the unlit entryway across the room. The character walked into the bedroom. No sound from their feet on the floor. A door opened, my closet. Something heavy thudded on the carpet. When the character returned, they raised the pistol, the one I'd bought to kill myself one day, and told me to sit on the couch and then started talking. I don't remember everything they said. I'm still shaking off the disbelief like a dog trying to get dry. Something about a folder within a folder within a folder on a cluttered desktop, how I'd left them in there with the others. Then it started to make sense. It's their eyes, I began to think. Shifting under pressure. I knew because they were my eyes. Tom suggested it when we worked on this story together. Put a piece of yourself in to give the story more of a soul, he said. But we never finished it. I tried to complete the piece on my own, slashing away at it, to make myself understood. Like the character. They felt extraneous, someone told me after I read the story during an open mic. But I didn't want to give up the character because I'd given them something of mine and I wanted to be understood. Maybe not now, but someday. So I copy pasted their section into a separate document and put it in the folder within a folder within a folder. The character wanted me to finish the work I started. I don't know how to do that, I told them. Then we need to find Tom. How do you know about Tom? I watched you both create me, the character said. You need to finish my story, explain who I am, and show why I matter. Tom lived in an apartment building just outside of Lincoln, New Hampshire. I found his address in an old email chain on my laptop and then typed it into my phone. It took me a while to find my car keys. Digging through the debris of my life, the sense memories of our friendship returned. The thickness of his fingers when we shook hands for the first time after our hometown reorganized the high school bus routes. His basso swagger in theater tryouts, around bonfires, on pointless rides in the wilderness. The wall of his body as we fought about the small, stupid things that weren't what I felt about his plan to leave so soon after graduation. The smell of him as our faces succumbed to the gravity always there between us. The silk of his tongue. The silence he was capable of when, 1 week later, we piled the things he wouldn't surrender into the bed of his truck. I need to use the bathroom, I say. It's the last rest stop for a while, so I'd like to stop. Okay, says the character. There's a small bathroom in the rest stop's main building. I piss in a stall with no door. A janitor sprays a mirror with washing fluid and then slowly wipes it dry. A trucker brushes their teeth at the rightmost sink in the row. A brown puddle shines on the floor. The character is waiting for me at some vending machines outside the bathroom. Gonna hit the store before we go, I say. I don't see the pistol, but I know it's close. I go into the store and tug a bag of beef jerky off one of the hooks. Back outside, we pass a truck as it feeds from the pumps. The driver smokes a cigarette and holds it through the rear window with their free hand between puffs. Nobody talks for a while once we're back on the road. We hit a stretch of construction. The wheels grumble on the rough road and the pistol jostles against the character's leg as potholes pass beneath us. I'm sorry, I say. The character says nothing, so I keep going. I'm sorry for starting something and not finishing it. I screwed it up. I don't really know how else to say it, and to be honest, I'm not really good with words. So I'm just trying to say it plainly so you understand. It's a thing I do a lot, and you didn't ask for this. Okay, the character says. I hear them swallow air, a discomforting gulp caught in the throat. Dark mountainsides rise around us like the bows of great ships. Want some beef jerky? I ask. The character swallows again. Yes, they say. There's a new vulnerability in their voice now, like a small crack in a water glass. Open it. I've got it in the console right here. You might have an easier time if you put the gun down, I continue. The character rests the pistol on the dashboard, then takes the bag and peels away the vacuum seal. They pluck a thick piece of beef jerky from the bag and eat it. I smile as their eyes widen. good, right? I ask. The character nods vigorously as they reach back into the bag. Have as much as you'd like, I say. It's a long drive. The character holds the bag out after eating a few more pieces. I take one and pop it in my mouth, chewing slowly. The taste of salt warms my brain. We've struck an understanding. I listen as the character's fingers search the corners of the plastic bag for morsels. Thirsty? I ask. Yes, says the character. Grab this bottle in the cup holder. I've got some water in it. The character takes the bottle and unscrews the top. Water splashes on their front as they drink. They take the pistol from the dashboard once they finish, but instead of pointing it at me, the character rests the gun on their knee. It's quiet for a long while, disturbed only by the faint murmur of music from the radio. Then the character says, "Thank you." I nod. Then I ask, why do you want this? Like, to be completed? To have us do all this so we can complete you? Something just doesn't feel like right about me, the character says. Like I can feel like I'm about to fall apart. Have you ever felt that way? Like there's something not there holding you together, that you're going to pieces? I tighten my hands on the steering wheel. Yes, I say. I need to know if it means something, and I can't do that if I feel this incompleteness. Is that wrong? No, I say. Did you write me to be like this? To feel this way? I didn't, I say. Then I say, I don't know if I did or meant to. How do you not know? Maybe I was just spitting out my thoughts because some days I feel like I'm coming apart. A minute goes by and then I ask, what will you do after? After I finish you, I mean. What do you do? The character asks. Like usually? Yeah. Eat, go to work, try to write sometimes, sleep again. Maybe I'll do those things or something else. We reach Tom's apartment building and stop in a corner of the parking lot. Everything in town is closed and the only sonic constant is the breeze in the valley. When we get to the door, I think about how much he may have changed in the time since we last saw one another. I ring the doorbell. I wonder if he'll even recognize me. Tom's stocky form stomps down the stairs with the same rough crop of strawberry hair on his head and face, the testament shirt he's worn a million times. And then he's at the door, his mouth twisted into a grimace. Mike, what are you? Whoa, hold on. What the hell? He demands, his eyes trained on the pistol in the character's hand. Take us inside, the character says. Let's just take it easy. Inside, the character continues, their voice a faulty plug. We follow Tom up 2 flights of stairs. His apartment is a cramped rectangle, a combined bedroom kitchen den with a bathroom in the back. A half-drank beer rests on the lone table beside a powered-down laptop. A ceiling fan rattles on its peg. Tom sits in one of the squat wooden chairs at the table and stares at me. What the hell is going on? He asks. I look at the character. They lean against the counter and gesture at Tom with the pistol, like I'm supposed to recite the whole story. So I say, Tom, remember that story about that guy who's trying to write one more story before he retires, but he struggles to do it and he winds up down at the Cape for a friend's funeral where he falls back in love with this artist he knew as a younger man, and there's all these different characters around, like that guy who rents him in the apartment, but it's a shitty apartment, and it's all he has plus the one below it, some same building. But we didn't really finish that story, and the whole thing with the apartment felt weird and unnecessary. Tom blinks at me before nodding. I say, well, we need to finish it. The character says we do, and they've got this gun, and if we don't finish it, I don't know what's going to happen. I tried to complete it before and failed, and now that's on me. So we got to finish it. I keep talking and repeating what I've said, and as I do, Tom reaches for his beer and swallows it in small sips. I ask if he has a copy of the story, the old version, the one I didn't butcher trying to make it something good or at least complete. I don't know, says Tom. He's looking at the pistol again. He says, I can try looking for it. Tom powers up his laptop and clicks through folders, opening text documents and closing them. Then he finds it. The Escape Artists, we called it. The character perks up when Tom reads the title aloud, like they know it too. We get to work, open up a fresh document. Sometimes I'm typing, sometimes it's Tom. We settle into our old routine. At one point, Tom gets up and goes into his bedroom and comes back with a thesaurus, the one from English class in college we both took. He thumbs through the tattered, sometimes water-damaged pages, hunting for good words he knows are there when we can't quite place them. Tom builds sentences like bonfires, a way I can't, So when it's time to hit them with the period, they ignite, strong, enduring. I watch him write and try not to cry as I remember the acute part of our friendship, the warm competition of it, how desperately I miss his company. When it's my turn to write again, I slow things down to keep it going for as long as I can. I think about the time I asked about Tom and I's friendship, why it entered this twilight. I had nothing to say, but I've since concluded this. Sometimes in life, the accumulation of wind and rain and human pressure is enough to cleave stone from the side of a mountain and send it tumbling out of sight. The character paces behind us as we work. I hear them talking about themselves now, the first time they've done it, talking about the building they inherited from their mother. Their mother. I never thought about the character being born. Can you focus, please? Tom asks. The character stops pacing and drums their fingers against their legs in fleshy glissandos. We write about the character and the building they maintain, about the people who rent out its shabby warrens. Gasping pipes run dry in the winter. A starved boiler struck dumb in the winter. Forgiveness begged in the form of late rent. Outside, the dark sky turns to royal blue and we stop for a while, consider cigarettes, and catch ash with the tips of our shoes. Then we keep going. We play out a group effort to turn the character's backyard into something communal. A sibling stays for a while before moving on, dragging a childhood like a bag of heavy clothes. A love interest flees and then returns. We seek surprises as the words dribble from our hands. The last sentence stares back at us for 10 silent minutes, the fact we're finished blooming slowly against our exhausted minds. Tom digs an old printer out of the closet and connects it to the laptop. Pages unfurl from its jaws. When the last page emerges, the character takes them all and sits at the table. Then Tom shoves me back with his thick hands and I topple from my chair. The pistol clanks to the floor and scrapes across the linoleum away from me. Panting, pained, I feel like some pet struck in a wild, depleted fit. What am I and why am I here, I think. But those words aren't in a sequence, just a cloud of feeling, a bodiless brain attempting to type its intent. What is wrong with you, Tom asks. He lifts the pistol, thumb and forefinger pinched on the grip, and sets it on top of the fridge. Then he sinks to the floor beside me, and the sounds of our breathing collide, discordant like clocks out of sync. The character is reading what we wrote, page after page slapped against the wooden table. This is really good, the character says. Is that why you came up here? Tom asks me. I don't say anything, but there's an urge to reach for his hand. I don't. The character stands, walks to the door, and opens it. I mean something, they say. Some of the pages fall from their fingers and bloom against the floor. I mean something, they say again. Then they're through the door and gone.
Wow. I know you read this piece before. I'm not sure exactly what changes you've made since it's been, I think, probably a few months since you read it, but this piece hit me really hard tonight. I don't know if it's because like I've been dealing with like writer's block and stuff myself recently or what, but this is such a unique take on writer's block too. It's such a like really bittersweet and like focused on like human relationships and stuff. Usually like pieces that are like about the creative struggle are so like centered within the mind of the artist, right? And so like uniquely concerned with the artist's narcissism and their desire to make something out of nothing. Whereas this is like so different from that. This is so much like about like the author's relationship, not just to their, not just relationship, but responsibility, right? To their work and to the human beings in their life and the impact that the artistic process has on that. And it being framed as kind of a road trip with this unfinished character is so unique and so beautiful. It's just a really moving piece.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That was so lit. I just had to put out a fire. I'm not kidding. Anyway, no, you have a really good way of making people like, you know, actually give a shit about, you know, you have characters that actually care about. And I really love the way you, I had the urge to touch it, to hold his hand. I didn't like the way you said that was really good. Sorry, I'm disheveled because of the whole fire, and then my dad came at the same time. It was weird. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And
I'm
and
glad
good
you
luck. I'm glad. Good luck with the fire.
Is
Glad
the
you
fire out?
So I'm not in rehab yet. So I was trying to do hot rails off the stove, and yeah.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
oh, damn! Holy shit!
I think we'll
Be
pivot
safe.
away from that since we're recording.
It's
But Michael, it's a great story, and the really tender way you describe the friendship at the center of the story is beautiful too. Like, you don't often get that kind of like stories that are, you get a lot of stories that are about like mourning for lost relationships, right? Lost loves, but you don't get many of that are like about mourning for lost friendships and like the regular wear and tear that happens on friendships, and that question of like, how did I just end up so far away from this person who I was so close to? But anyway, I'm rambling. It's a fantastic piece.
I appreciate that. The reason I've been kind of going back and forth on this is that there's like, I have like 10,000 words of a novella length version of this that's fairly different. Like there are more characters that come out, and it's a lot more stretched out and exploring. And like, what if, like really a person you created like was suddenly in a car with you, and like what questions would they ask you? So like I might take more of that and put it in. I don't know if this piece is quite done yet, but some of the newer stuff is like about the friendship, and the whole scene of them eating is new. So hopefully that didn't
Is there
come
a
across
reason
as
you
too tedious.
don't want to go with the novella length version?
I don't know. It's like I just keep going back and forth. Like I have like some different scenes of it written that are kind of scattered, and I think it's mostly caught up in a broader sort of like writing funk. So it's
Oh,
just
I
sort of
hear
like
that.
I'm kind of dramatizing my own funk at a certain point. So sometimes that's really interesting to me, and sometimes I'm like, cool, this is like a nightmare, so I'll stop writing it. But this week I started poking at this version again, so that might inspire me to go back. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Thank
And
you. I
as I
appreciate that.
said, I'm really like feeling that at this moment too. So,
From one blue check to another, chef's kiss on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. From one blue
I,
check to another.
I could never get a blue check because then Gigi Rowland would unfollow me and I'd have to kill myself.
Yeah, you know what? The more I think about it and realize how certain things play out, the more I realize it's win-win.
Ooh, wow. Wow.
I've honestly begun like
Rockstar.
thinking about how I could go about losing my blue check, because I feel like, I don't know. I have friends who, they make fun of me about it. It's like, damn, like I feel like I lost something here.
The heavy is the cross, right? Or heavy is the crown.
Yeah, heavy is the crown, as we say.
Anyway, thank you so much, Michael. And
Thank you.
Rudy, you've got a piece. At least I assume the person identified as in ARC 01 in the list.
So this orc, yeah, that I don't know who he is, but I know you wanted to read something, so I was gonna let you go first because this is kind of a longer piece. It's 3,300 words, roughly, give or take.
No, don't worry about it. Read your
Okay.
piece, and
Okay.
if there's time, I'm not sure if I want to read the thing that I put in there.
Okay.
And mine's a little longer side too. So.
Okay. Let me tweet out the link here. Oh wait, no, actually, I'm sorry. I don't want to tweet out the link. I'm stupid. No, so this is for a contest called Markdown Jam, or it's not a contest, but it's a game jam called Markdown Jam, where the idea was to use a Markdown language to write a game. This is a tabletop RPG because everything I do is tabletop RPGs. But yeah, so this is about orcs. This is called Den of Evil. This starts out, it's a training manual from the Thaco Bestiary, Orc Edition, a manual for social work. And Thaco stands for the Transformative Housing and Corrections Office, their Department of Orc Matters. And as you can see, if you click the link, you have a bell curve with their logo on it with a really embarrassing typo in it. But yeah, so I'll just start it off. Empathy and courage. You are an empath. One specialized in working with frail bestial minds, the likes of which are akin to a wild animal, but much more dangerous. Obviously, we're talking about orc minds, and you, of course, are a TH-53 man-orc interlocutor. This training manual excerpt will describe your role in the process of relaying an orcish client to the Transformative Housing and Corrections Office, which is, as of the year 256 in the 8th age, a licensed purveyor of orc behavioral, mental health, and correctional services. During your time as a TH-53 contractor, you will have two main duties: dispensing programming to the orc client, hereafter referred to as the client, in the form of a 6-part standard array battery of tests, closely monitoring and interacting with the client as described. You are authorized to use your empathic bond to interact with the client. You execute this bond under the following safety protocols, acknowledging that A, you must administer these batteries in a safe, efficient way in a controlled environment, and B, you must maintain the safety of yourself and your client, whomst is, even now, THACO property at all times. Your work will aid in assigning a DIN number, that is a decoherent empathic number, to your orc, which is a form of empathically linked true name used in the arcane process of transfiguration that turns orcs into men. This is THACO's primary mission: transformation of savage tendencies through housing and correctional services that de-emphasize corporal punishment through data-driven arcane science. You will need only a copy of a web browser, this text, an active ethereal net connection to complete this task. Some additional materials may be required, like paper, for certain batteries, and simple math, with footnote there, is required to take an inventory of each battery's values. Footnote on simple math. A word on mathemagics. Hand enumeration is the heart and soul of social numerology. The 20 digits of the human body generously provide for easy summing, subtraction, multiplication, and division somehow, and in fact, count for man's mastery over sciences like mathematics and the arcane. Certain studies, citation needed, have even linked the biology of the less technologically inclined races, orcs, who are tridactyls, as well as tregroids, who are bidactyls, to cognitive difficulties associated with leaf, that is life, evocation, arcane, and fate educational systems. Though the use of dwarven calculating devices is deeply discouraged, since they break the mood and disrupt ritual attunement, an abacus is provided, the sidebar for your use. And I should mention, this is a game to be played with your pet, your real life pet. Robustness battery. Orcs are fundamentally aggressive creatures. This is well documented in behavioral literature and is not a judgment about moral or spiritual character. Demi-human behaviorists like Klein Silver, 239 of the 8th age, have noted that to the orc, responses to their aggression act as a behavioral shibboleth. Many have debated whether this significant trait is biological, magical, or cultural in origin, a fraught subject out of the scope of this training manual. But despite the specter of para-eugenics, nearly all experts agree that the way a man reacts to a busterous grunt, chest pound, or even a literal saber rattle forms a framework within the orc psyche, a scaffold on which all future relations are built. This is a fact that has informed up-teen military and humanitarian dealings, both legendary and contemporary. The principal currency of aggression is often said to be strength, a broad term, yes, but one that conjures up various clinically useful associations. And this is what these queries are designed to measure. Query 1. And anybody with pets, you can actually do these at home right as we read, up to a point, if you want to.
I was going to try with Mr. Bones. He was actually on the counter and right next to me, but then he laughed.
Yeah, like orcs do. I mean, that's the way it is. So query 1, ready a leash and a harness. Harness your client and attempt to promenade them a short distance. Don't worry, most clients are accustomed to being restrained. Does their pull feel jolting, aggressive, unbalance you, fill you with indistinct worry? Query 2, wait patiently for your client to engage you and knock the noggin an orcish trust-giving gesture. You will know when this happens because they will headbutt you. Avoid showing fear or shock, as this is considered disrespectful in many orcish cultures. You may be engaged in another task when this happens. Again, avoid fear or shock. Respond with empathy and optionally a head pat. Does their knock the noggin make a sound, disrupt your concentration, or suggest some sort of hesitancy? Query 3. Taking your client by their mitts, begin an impromptu dance with them. Allow them to pull away when they are apparently ready. Check any that apply. Client was in control of the dance at all times. Client pulled away earlier than expected. Client sank to the ground and avoided dancing. Robustness battery contributes 2 numbers to the den, which is a total of 12 numbers, the den. To find RB rating, count the number of check boxes, multiply that number by 2 to achieve the robustness subtotal, subtract any EMO check boxes from the robustness subtotal to achieve robustness total. Agile battery. Orcs are known for their physical capabilities, as fast twitch musculature is a imagogenetic feature of their race. Orc brains have been shown to activate in response to quick moving visual stimuli. Within the context of community housing environment, it is important the staff are aware of each client's capacity for movement and activity levels. With orcs in particular, drapetomania is a concern, as is sleight of hand and tumbling, of course. The queries are an attempt to evaluate quickness as it relates to an orc's reflexes. Query 1, take a small non-dangerous object and move it in front of your client's field of visual activation rapidly. Note their eye movements. Check any that apply. The client's eyes follow the object with precision. The client appears to view the object with suspicion. The client looks at you more than the object. Query 2, toss the object gently in a direction opposite of your client and observe their response. Check any that apply. The client pursues the object. Pro, the client returns the object to you. Ag, the client shows aggressive behavior towards the object. Query 3, strings are known to activate the orcish nervous system due to its propensity to vibrate in anti-harmony with the universe's natural twine. Dangle a string in front of your client and observe their behavior. You may optionally attach a small non-dangerous object to the string. Check any that apply. The client shows interest in the string. The client is compelled to touch the string. The client assumes a bat, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, my Orcish is pretty bad. The Orcish fight response posture and begins rapid aggressive gesturing. Additional parameters, check all applicable. Approved narcotics were administered during this test at the suggestion of an on-duty apothecary. Client has recently eaten. Agile battery contributes 2 numbers to the den. To find agile battery rating, count the number of check boxes, count ag type selections twice, unless the selection of pro type was also entered. Multiply that number by 2 to achieve the agile subtotal. If 152A, subtract 3 from the agile subtotal. If 152B, without 152A, add 3 to the agile subtotal to achieve the agile total. Illness battery. Understanding of the orcish corporeal state is critical to the understanding of the orcish psyche, as orc matters are fundamentally physical ones rooted in the firmament of flowing blood, straining sinew, and calcitrant bone. These are simple tests that are meant to assess basic physical fitness. Most of the time, these can be completed without a comprehensive inspection by you, and data from a trained apothecary will suffice. Query 1, is your client, check any that apply, of battle or rutting age, of normal BMI, sexually virile, physically active, or male? Illness battery contributes 2 numbers to the den. To find illness battery rating, subtract the number of unchecked boxes from 22 to achieve the illness total. Intelligence battery. Some of the men from the 7th age, revered as scholars, regarded intelligence as an unquantifiable concept. It took many centuries of fooling and many lives hewn to shreds for us to circle back and reorient ourselves to the idea that the non-physical does indeed have a measurable presence in corporeal reality. This idea is fundamental to transformative housing. The space transforms the client, transforms the space, as well as a foundation of interdisciplinary policies Thaco uses, be they arcane or mundane. The minds of men are structured as castles that keep the day's minutiae compartmentalized into regimented sections. These vary in fortification from form and integrity. No one disputes that the psychic ramparts of a besieged Stuart look different from those of the rightful king surrounded by love and vitality, but their primary feature is discernible structure. The minds of Orkkind are barrows, heaps for festering pieces of emotional driftwood that occasionally release dangerous wraiths when set aflame by fiery impulses of frustration or rage. As an empath attempting to attune to this entropy-ridden environment, you should always keep focused on the physical. Your task as a social worker, evaluating the client to stay grounded. With that said, assessing Orkin intellect is easy. You just use magic. Query 1. Touch your client after some time away from them till you trigger their activation arousal sound. Is it enthused, vibrating, terrifying, or threatening? Query 2. Post-activation, tune to your client with the clinical psychic handshake. When you have become attuned and are inside their mind barrow, their mind's eye will attempt to flee from you. Move your projection into the psychodynamic wake left behind and begin drafting it, like you would a semi-truck. In the physical world, you should keep your client wrapped with food or padding. Analyze the wake and fill out this form based on the standard Art 2 Psi guidelines. That's the form. Intelligence battery contributes 2 numbers to the den. Define intelligence battery rating, regurgitate sensory data after deattuning, create a box and whisper plot from regurgitated sensory data, find outliers with your third eye, or in all cases, besides a threatening activation, count the number of outliers to achieve intelligence battery total, and in all cases with threatening activation, invert that number sequentially. Negative values are disallowed. And if you need a hand with this, you have the handy dandy abacus here, which you can actually click on and move this shit around. But be careful, you don't click it too many times or it might break on you. Remus Jemima battery. Orc lust for battle and braggadocio eventually wanes with time. Most scholars agree that this represents a transition in both body and spirit. Nearly everyone has heard tales of the Tuscans, those heartwarming amalgams of orc and old uncle. While these may be only a fiction or legend of ages past, it is a fact that the process of transformative housing is a much lighter blow to orcs of a much more advanced age category. These queries are designed to assess how thoroughly age has eroded your client's natural spark, because as the 7th age adage goes, you can't start a fire without a spark. Query 1, stare into the eyes of your client. What do you see? Check any that apply. The client stares back at you. The client seems to display resentment or envy. The eyes contain the embers of ambition, not yet snuffed out. Query 2, has your client achieved? Check any that apply. 10 summers or more. Remus Jemima battery contributes 2 numbers to the den. Define RGB rating, count up the number, check boxes in query 1. If it is more than 0, your Remus Jemima battery total is 8. Proceed to the next battery. If it is 0, proceed to step 2. Count up the number of check boxes in query 2. If it is 0, your Remus Jemima battery total is 8. If it is 1, your Remus Jemima battery total is 16. Jiven battery. The orc has, in less erudite ages, been said to be a mockery of the image of man. Certainly, the brutality inherent in most prominent orcish physical features, gore horns, tusks, large jowls, is an example of this. But let's focus on a key word in the above statement, mockery. Orc culture is notoriously humorous and sullen. The clients you deal with each day come from an ethnic tradition that worships death and sees their mortal raiment as an annoyance at best. And as a note there, Lord Gorham notes in The Necromancer of Dol Guldur a treatise against charitable view of orc social services, that orc self-care mostly involves tusk sharpening routines that facilitate mouth raping other orcs or the occasional human of either sex who has been wived by force. When faced with matters of corporeal happenstance that threaten their ability to wage endless battle or compete in crushing blood sport, such as incarceration, orcs will resort to a form of social gamesmanship, a parody of human emotions that can make them appear more like men. This encourages us to set our natural, correct impulses and notions aside. Outside the gently beveled parapets of Thaco housing facilities, it is rare to see an orc sing or dance, but many a turnkey can attest to the jovial outpourings of the orc spirit that exists behind our gates. You might think that this is because orcs are happy for their transformative housing or opportunity, and in a way, this is correct. Thaco's successes are well documented in both academic and lay publications, and as you know, Thaco's purpose is to transform orcs into some pale semblance of men. But in many cases, there is a more sinister veneer to the celebratory, seemingly placated orc. Excessive celebration on or off the field oftentimes conceals a desire to mislead enemies. And as you must know, the enemy of transformative social work is misinformation and deception. Beware the orc who acts a fool around you, their authority and caretaker, for they are most likely engaging in an attempt to persuade you to lower your guard. This battery is designed to assess your client's propensity for such deceptive behavior, and for reasons of security, requires you to separate yourself from them before completing it. Query 1. Has your client presented any of these behaviors in the past? Check any that apply. Deceptive grubbing behavior, such as feigning hunger to get additional meals, malingering, overreacting to injuries, theft of victuals, intraracial deception. Query 2. Does your client know any tricks to be performed for a reward? Check once for each trick known, no need to name the tricks. Query 3. Has your client ever vocalized or in mime or mockery of any non-orc tongue? Check any that apply. Yes, in the manner of the common tongue. Yes, in the manner of a non-orc tongue, Elvish, Dwarven desert speech. Or my client's growls resemble pure, non-debased, dark speech. Jive and battery contributes two numbers to the den. Define jive and battery, multiply the number of checkboxes from query 1 by the number of checkboxes in query 2, substituting a minimum of 1 in both cases if no boxes have been checked, and find the jive subtotal. Add 5 to the jive subtotal for each checkbox in query 3 to achieve the JB total. And this would be the form here that you use to submit it. So you submit a case number and your 6 numbers that make up the den. So enter the values you accumulated in the above batteries, comma separated with no spaces like this example. And those look strangely familiar, maybe like the D&D standard array of scores, ability scores. I don't know. Maybe I'm just my mind here or something. But also enter your case number, which you will find in your TH53 packet, or in some cases branded on the body of your client. Your case number will allow you to track your client later on. So if it is necessary to create one, use a number that is distinct in your mind. Epilogue. Congratulations, your client is now within the system and will be transferred to a Thaco facility within the next 24 hours. Transformative housing represents a true hero's journey for your orc, and you'll be able to keep tabs on them with the Buckfinder arcane data set, BAD. Every night, on or around the witching hour, a new BAD data will be teleported to the page below. This data shows all orcs currently in the regional correctional system using magic turn-off glyphs, their representation of their current status and temperament. And this thing would normally be on an itch.io page that I would update. And this is data from a Thaco facility called the Fertile Hills Housing Facility, or Fertile Hill Housing Facility. From this data, you can infer how your orc's transformative housing experience is progressing. Does your orc appear wide-eyed and beaming? Though these traits may be jarring when rendered in the crudeness of the turn-off glyphs, they approximate happiness. Seeing this is a clear symbol of your orc undergoing a smooth transition. Many things about your orc's mood can be inferred just by looking at their artfully painted visage. One thing to watch for is the feared orc horns. Though Thaco staff do their best to keep these trimmed to reasonable levels, orc horn growth is rapid and unpredictable, similar to a band of skilled warg riders. In a compulsory housing situation, they are often used to gore or injure staff or even other orcs. And a note on that, some nefarious Thaco disciplinary contractors have taken to a practice called horn dogging, which is illegal in most human and elven jurisdictions. It involves taking lots on the largest orcs and pitting them against each other in buckrats, bouts of gratuitous orc exploitation. Though this is infrequent and strongly discouraged in the staff manual, it is nevertheless an issue. This heinous behavior shows the utility and ethicality of horn trimming, which some orc anthropologists have deemed ethnic erasure and culturally insensitive. Orc horns often splinter and crack on their own. When an orc is engaged in horn polishing, they are oftentimes undertaking a primitive proto-medical version of what our specially trained staff do during trims. It isn't cute or funny when orcs do this. They're actually in agony. Psychic debriefing. Over time, you may notice your orc's countenance changing. This is absolutely normal. The ultimate goal of Thaco is, as stated heartily, to transform orcs into men or do the best that can be done in that regard. Of course, Thaco has a rigid set of metrics, many of which are proprietary and cannot be shared, regarding manhood. But as one of the races lucky enough to not have been born into orc flesh, you know in your heart of hearts what makes a man. As a way to debrief from your empathic linking, it may be helpful to correspond telepathically through controlled means, of course, with your client throughout their transformative housing experience. Follow these simple steps to do so. Save a copy of the most recent glyphic depiction of your client. Load it into your favorite calligramancy software, such as Microsoft Paint. Humanize your client by altering the picture as you see fit, subtly projecting your psychic signature onto the image as you do so. Project the picture, along with a message, if you so choose, back to the client, planting seeds of good intent within them. Corrections, the C in Thaco, need not be all short clubs and Thorazine. To correct your orc's face, literally turning their frown into a smile, may be the best gift you can give them. And finally, sailing into the west. Eventually, the Thaco housing complex with your orc in it may reach capacity. This is usually at about 30 to 40 orcs. When this happens, the next witching hour will bring with it a fresh slate, tabula rasa, and transfers to the facility will be closed as staff prefer to move clients elsewhere to the next phase. While Thaco process is, once again, proprietary, you should be left with reassurance by the fact that the compassionate work of turning orcs to men does not cease or flag, even as rotund, stocky clientele are transported elsewhere. I'll leave you with a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed into the west, until at last on a night of rain, Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that, as is in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. And that's that.
This is some wild ass shit. I just, as like a game, this is nuts. Because oh my God, the idea of using your pet as a like resolution system on top of this like faux clinical form and like the satire that you're engaged in here of the like are arcs black people like debate, right? Is it like the debates in about like about whether there's something inherently racist about orcs, right? As a character or as a race or whatever. I don't know, there's a lot of shit going on here, and you've
Yeah.
assembled it in really, really wonderfully bizarre fashion. What was your inspiration for this?
And interestingly enough, this is not a game about race fundamentally. As weird as that sounds, even though there's like literal shucking and jiving and stuff, terms and stuff like that in there. They are racial, but this is actually kind of inspired by an experience I had with a psychiatrist, who I should name, but I won't, probably because I'll get in trouble. But basically, she had me walk back and forth. Like we were in the came into her office and we were just talking, and she said, "Well, stand up and walk back and forth." I'm like, okay, like, and and just like I felt I don't know how I was supposed to feel about that, but it was a really interesting experience, and it was
And did it feel dehumanizing to have another person basically walk you? Is
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like at that point, I've been so thoroughly dehumanized by depression. I don't think it's really possible to dehumanize me, in any real sense. But no, I thought it was interesting.
I love that. That's also one of my strongest held views, right behind not ever liking anybody who drives a pickup truck, is that anything anybody could ever think or say or do to me, live inside my head for a day and then get back to me, do better.
Exactly. No, I totally share that view. And thanks for sharing that, but the thing that really kind of inspired this is, the pets thing really is supposed to be kind of a play on how some social workers and mental health workers see their clients, right? I mean, that's the whole deal. Is basically, I mean, people aren't, there's people that want to do good there, definitely. But in my experience, it's been kind of like, hey, like we're doing you a favor type of shit. And it's also kind of been, it is dehumanizing, I guess, in the beginning stages of it when you're, I guess it might be dehumanizing to some people. But yeah, I mean, it's not really necessarily even about race. It's just about the way some people communicate, their empathy, basically. And that's why, you play an
Like the
empath.
profoundly condescending nature of social.
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
inherently condescending.
Yeah, I mean, just, basically that.
Yeah.
Empathy's taken on such a weird, like almost like antithesis of itself these days. It's such an overused concept by now that I feel like it's lost its meaning.
No, definitely. It's really,
People claiming to be empaths. Once people started claiming to be empaths, I think is when it just completely jumped the shark. Like,
yeah, I know, it's so weird because I wonder if that was like before or after like the X-Men, like somebody saw Jean Grey and thought, hey, that could be me, but in like an office setting.
Wait, what was her like superpower or whatever?
I think basically like she's a like telepath, so she can like feel, she gets in people's heads, she can feel people.
Okay.
Yeah, or whatever. But I don't know. Like it just seems like you're right though. Like the mystique of empathy. To use another another X-Men. I didn't mean to name drop another X-Men there, but like the idea of like like, well, hey, I'm an empath. Like I can feel things about other people. That to me it seems it's disingenuous, and it's like, hey,
no, completely. There's people in LA you'll see like hippies on them, or just other kind of questionable types on the having stands saying empath, like, well, give me money and I'll empathize with you or whatever. So
yeah, no, it's really pretty crazy. And like I think a lot of those same personalities like wind up in social work and also in mental health work. Definitely,
it's such a slippery slope. I dated a shrink for 3 months, and it was, I mean, it's weird in a way. I almost think like it's better if the shrink is kind of fucked up, because maybe they do have, they're more likely to have empathy, but I don't know.
Yeah,
it was definitely one of those things where like all the stereotypes of a shrink were true that I saw in this girl.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, anyway, thanks for letting me read it.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. So I think I'm gonna call it a night there.
Oh, you should read your piece.
I don't think I've got, I have a thing that I wrote while I was in the car traveling, and I don't know, it's getting kind of late tonight, and I haven't looked at it, I haven't edited it at all. I was thinking of maybe, when I wrote it, I was thinking of maybe using it for a Substack post, but
Sounds like you passed the point of no return. You should just read it.
Ah, shit, you're right. So, okay,
Yeah, that's
so
what it sounds like to me.
to provide, I'll put the piece in the chat, I guess. So to provide some context for this thing, oops, I almost sent it in a DM to someone. To provide some context for this thing, basically, for the past month and a half, I've been laboring under some pretty severe writer's block. I had a real burst of inspiration. I started this piece, not the piece you're about to read, but this other piece. I laid it all out. I got to like probably 60% done. And then I hit a brick fucking wall, and it was like chipping away at it little by little after that. And then I got sick for like 2 weeks. And it was and then I came out of that and right into the fucking headlights, or the opposite of headlights, of like profound seasonal depression. And then I hopped in a car to go from my parents' house down here to Virginia. And so these are basically just notes that I took in the notes app on my phone while I was sitting in the back of the car on the way down here. And I don't know that it makes any kind of sense. My thought when I was writing it was that I would, on my Substack a few months ago, I did this piece, I think I called it Fragments, where I basically took some notes that I'd taken during another trip from, during my move from Virginia back home to my parents. And then I kind of annotated it with footnotes and filled it out that way. And that's what I was thinking I would do with this piece. But as it stands, it's literally just what I wrote in the backseat of the car. So that's that. I'll read it. Just don't expect it to make sense, is what I'm saying. Yes, as Rudolph says in the thing, the Cracker Barrel et al. Adventure, which I think is a good way to put that other experience. So anyway, I'll just start, I guess. Heavy morning? Fog when we leave, gorgeous. I take a couple of pictures with my phone. They capture nothing. Whatever beauty I saw is gone. The lighting is wrong, too bright, too clear, cheap phone, cheap camera. You have to pay a premium, in cash or in toil, to see the world recreated as you imagine it. Otherwise, you have to settle for reality, sterile and lame, overexposed. I can't stop watching YouTube videos about hikers who disappear into the woods and die of exposure. Sometimes their bones are found years later next to their gear. Thinking of the thin windbreaker I'm wearing, bought from a thrift store years ago, stained, should be replaced. Lying on a pile of autumn leaves, my fleshless rib cage zipped up inside. How wonderful that all our trash will outlive us. How wonderful that our work will outlive us. A car going in the opposite direction crosses into our lane to avoid an Amish buggy. When the supply chain breaks down, the Amish will be the only ones left on these roads. I say this knowing exactly what I'm doing. I can't help myself. Provocateur. Soon my mom is talking about some apocalyptic Catholic prophecy. The Virgin appeared to school children somewhere. Garabandal? I sound it out in my head, and the Broaderbund software logo materializes in my imagination. False signal, static, adjust the dial. Apparently, Mary showed these park kids a vision of engines breaking down, the mechanics of modern civilization failing. My mom says it'll be an EMP attack. I say something like that seems unfeasible on a global scale, suggest a solar flare. My dad says there was just a major solar flare a few days ago. Adds something about the northern lights are supposed to be beautiful this weekend, I think. I think. This memory is already deteriorating, connective tissue breaking down. We're now in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot in Potsdam, 40 minutes from home. Don't remember much of that time, was typing. Missed so much while trying impotently to capture this one trivial ass moment. Forget it. A beautiful hospital in rural nowhere. Empty lots and strip malls. I want to say cornfields, but there are no cornfields. I've seen no cornfields. Where am I? My dad says something. I miss it. I ask him what he said. The sun didn't stay out long. Oh, it's raining. My mom points out an optometrist's office and asks if I remember when I went there. No, I don't even try to recall. He was very slow, my mom says. The rain is getting heavier. Tom Russell's Stealing Electricity plays. There's a Mexican dad on a power line. My dad and I sing along in a subdued, mumbly way. It's a favorite of ours. I played this album because I knew he would want to hear it. Still, our enthusiasm is restrained. We sing along because we can't help ourselves, not out of a desire to be heard. Your family is weird, Redacted said when my parents and sister visited for Christmas, back when I was in Maryland before the pandemic at all. You don't talk to each other. There's so much silence. I love the silence. The silence is a blessing. Tacky strip mall church. The exterior is a garish blue or purple, hand-lettered poster board signs in the window, full of shalls and thous, King James pretensions. I wonder why someone would start a church in a strip mall in the North Country. There's so much cheap real estate, so much empty land. It's disorienting to see artifacts of urbanism in the country. I think of Manchester. My mind fills with resentment and loathing, hatred, that fucking city, that fucking job, 7 years gone. Jacob broke his back for 7 years only to be given the wrong wife. Jacob was a con artist. He had it coming. My boss's body hanging in the tree, Judas's body hanging in the tree, both imagined, never seen. My second boss, the devout Christian, the cocksucker, joking about the body, joking about the box he found with my dead boss's, I say sex dildo here. It was, I had the word sex toy and I changed it to dildo. And anyway, joking about the box he found with my dead boss's dildo inside. God, I hope his children never read this. I remember the funeral. His 4-year-old son crying, sitting there, going over my eulogy in my head, twisting his eulogy in my hands, thinking about how the box with his ashes was smaller than the box with the dildo. Rudy ran a session of some homebrew RPG a few months later, one set in the real world, in our real lives, and I graphically described beating my new boss, the one who was alive. Is alive? COVID willing. He was a fat fuck, smoked, to death with a hammer and then walking into traffic. It was a relief to write this. I was complicit. I am complicit. Saw 2 more Amish horse-drawn carriages. One had sheep in the back. I'm regressing. The summer was so nice, the bliss of rock bottom. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe I will provide something in the footnotes, retroactive meaning, the lie that I can express tomorrow, what I'm trying to say today and what I felt yesterday. But my point is, it sucks now. I can't write. All my projects barely started lie fallow, over a week sedentary in bed with some shitty cold atrophying. But it was off before that. I've been worthless since September. Since my last trip to Virginia, maybe, but be careful about inferring causation. What's going on? I usually love the fall. We finally reached Watertown, the interstate, accelerating. Rest stop. Examine my hairline in the mirror. Have become obsessed with the thought that it's thinning in the front, receding slightly, more scalp visible between the follicles on the right side of the part on the left. Do I have my right and left reversed? Imagine the mirror, flip the camera, rotate Lakitu, bash the C buttons, hear that awful jarring sound, that noise that means no, that noise that means fuck you. I'd rather picture myself as a skeleton in the woods, as a rib cage in a secondhand windbreaker, than picture myself bald. Vanity, vanitas. The rain has stopped. There's just enough blue sky visible to reveal the depth of the clouds. They're layered beautifully. Thin, gray, smoky wisps passing over a heavy white cumulus. I don't have the vocabulary to describe this. So much of my language is conceptual, abstract, What a fucking shame. What good is an author who can't write vividly, who can't capture beauty? I notice I use beautifully already in this paragraph. Google, beautiful synonym. Get frustrated by my options. They're all awful, childish words. I think of bad creative writing assignments. I decide to leave it as it is. I put on Willie Nelson's The Troublemaker for my mom, his gospel album, a mutual favorite. Pushing the Venn diagrams of our shared taste to their limits. The first track, On Cloudy Day, The Rain is Back. Syracuse is a giant shopping mall, traffic congestion, smokestacks and parking garages encroaching on the interstate, a Bank of America sign retrofitted to the side of an ancient cathedral, one row of ultra-modern multicolored townhouses in the midst of graying brick and rot. We get through quickly, but not quickly enough. Looked at Twitter for a few minutes until the revulsion hit. Put down my phone and looked out the window. Farmland that hasn't been worked for years, small homes with chip paint, hills, standing water, peak foliage, beauty, beauty, beauty. Whitney Point, more hills, more trees that still have their leaves here. Orange, red, brown, green, gray, gray, gray. Heavy fog, low like smoke. Steve Earle warbling over fiddle music on the stereo. A broken a brown ramshackle trailer perched on a cliff over the highway. A glimpse of a weathered wooden cross, a roadside memorial, probably a dead child, maybe a drunk or a construction worker, laid out while laying out asphalt. Gorgeous, drowning in beauty, the hills continue, trying to negotiate lunch and the prisoner exchange with Redacted and my parents. Details are set and then withdrawn, shuffled, redealt. We'll meet in Pennsylvania, the Tim Hortons parking lot just over the border again. All right, good, God, it's so beautiful. A small quarry, piles of shale, Pennsylvania. The Tim Hortons parking lot across the street, Tobacco Junction, Smoking Joe's Tobacco Shop, side by side, serving the refugees fleeing New York's astronomical cigarette tax. Border towns always attract black markets. Tom Russell has a line about border towns. I don't remember it. I'm tired, 6 hours of sleep last night, maybe. Doubting this exercise, hating my words, saw Redacted on the way to the bathroom. Have to figure out what we're doing for lunch. Logistics are loathsome. After agonizing multi-party deliberations, we went to the diner across the street next to the aforementioned tobacco outlets, full of old people, Christmas tree decorated with plastic skeletons and black and orange bows, topped with a massive polystyrene skull with a headdress of bows and black and gold balls. Mom tells Redacted that the kids at church dress as saints for the Feast of Christ the King. No, not Halloween, they do not celebrate. I suggest that if they opted for costumes depicting the saints' martyrdom, they could cover all their seasonal bases. Plus, most classical art of saints depict their martyrdom, so it's not blasphemous. Completely in step with tradition, actually. I'm typing at the table, feel self-conscious, know this is artlessly worded. Redacted just asked if I'm writing a novel, and then joyously pointed out a wreath on the wall. That wreath over there says, eat, drink, and be scary. Okay, I'm putting the phone away. At this point, all the sentences get shortened because I switched from being in the car with my parents to being in the car with the person who's taking me down to Virginia, who I'm calling Redacted in this. So it's just a bunch of short sentences from here on out. In the car with Redacted now. Your route may be affected by mid-Atlantic floods. Mistaking Burger King sign for full moon. So many crosses. I feel like I'm drifting away again, I admit. The sky is constantly beautiful, dynamic, high contrast. Something below the conversation, a memory of past trips, Thanksgiving, the perfect time to travel. A sign that just says vanish. And that's it. That's where the notes end.
William, this is not only so incredible. I really mean that. You don't read, at least when I'm paying attention. I haven't heard you read at too many of these events. I want to say structurally even, I wanted you to not make an excuse. I wish you had just read the last bit, but I understand. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
explain things as well, because one thing that Andrelzik, Mike Andrelzik, I think you guys have published him. I've talked to him before.
Yeah.
His book. We're both obsessives over a certain. There's a Japanese style to what you've written here, and actually, what you've written, I think, is what classifies as haibon, and haibon is basically a prose poem that ends with a haiku or
Uh-huh.
or a minimalist poem, and that's how I view those last several lines that you read. And yeah, so that's the, I mean, but just that, anyway, so the form made sense to me. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
intuitive form, basically. I mean, this has been a thing that's been around, but yes,
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think you need no justification for that. I also, geez, man, I would only, edit for, grammar. I was, there was so many parts. The cornfield, for instance, I love how you're in the middle of nowhere, and yet there are still no cornfields.
But
Because
my imagination wanted to me to put them in there, right? And
I
that's
know, but that was actually a very descriptive line in a minimalist way, in a Japanese way. Not to drive that home too hard, because that's what people imagine when they think of that. And by saying that that's not what you're seeing, then that's also a pretty strong image in very few words. And people use the cornfield. Roxane Gay dunked on an alt-lit writer a while back, being like, "Oh, I'm not from the city. I live in a fucking cornfield." And it's like, bitch, do you live in the literal
right.
cornfield, or are you just being lazy with your description and not everything in the middle of nowhere is a cornfield?
And that, Josh, is a fucked up thing, right? Because this is an area where I grew up, where I lived a big chunk of my life, and my imagination still wants to put the fucking cornfields in, right? There's something about that narrative that's so like perversely like ubiquitous, that like even as like a kid from the country, knowing that there aren't that many not in northern New York. Iowa might be another fucking matter, but wanting to put the cornfields in, I don't know, but thank you, Josh, I appreciate it.
The last note, and it's only because I don't want to, because honestly, I'm really impressed. I mean, again, here's what I think, but I just have not heard you read too much of these things. I've read a lot of your stuff that veers towards criticism. Someone mentioned, I think it was Gabriel Henry Miller. I've been rediscovering Miller lately for different reasons. But anyways, this is obviously not Henry Miller, but it's that, introspective autofiction or playing with the raw material of life, whatever you want to say. That, like, I really liked how wonderful that our trash will outlive us, how wonderful that our work will outlive us. I really like those two sentences, for reasons that are in some ways personal and maybe esoteric. Just in that, I often think the things that people think are plastic or whatever actually are the more real things, which is just a Baudrillard hyper-realism French view of whatever. But those two sentences together, juxtaposing whatever, the trash and our work. And you're not saying the work is trash. I don't know. I just thought that.
No, I mean, I'm kind of romanticizing the trash, right? I'd rather like have the windbreaker outlive me, right? Like there's something, people are so like, and I get like the environmental impact, right? Like on some like, if I more morally correct or whatever stance, it's terrible that we're leaving all this fucking trash behind, right? But there's something wonderful about it too, right? Because we're so perishable, and when you're thinking about death, and I was very like you can tell I was in a very morbid state of mind. So when you're thinking about death, it's so great to think that like there's shit we made that'll just persist, like nature be damned.
Oh yeah, our trash is like a document of living. It's like our little time capsules,
Yeah, I mean, it's like a shrine to us, basically. I mean, it's like ancient cultures, they wanted mummification, they wanted immortality. And that line really captures that. Without that's our immortality is fucking
Yeah.
a Coke bottle or some shit.
Yeah,
It's right up there with one of my favorite Houellebecq scenes in a Houellebecq novel. I think it's in Map and Territory, but Houellebecq, the character, I believe, or maybe not, because he's actually murdered in that book by himself as the writer. But he, like me, buys the same item several times over. The sweatpants I'm wearing, I have 10 pairs of these Champion sweatpants, and he finds comfort in them. And in the book, his last of this hunting jacket rips, and it's the last one. And he's like me; he buys multiple copies, and it's done forever. And it's just it's a jacket, whatever. And it makes the character sob. And I actually understand why, because he had been harboring these out of production jackets for years, and the last one he had is done, and he's like having a bit of a moment about it. And anyways, this last I'll say is just brilliant editing. I think you should, and I think that it could go in bigger places than you might think, or maybe you don't think or don't care, or maybe it should go on Misery Tourism, but it's brilliant, and I will promote the fuck out of that wherever it appears. That's it.
Thank you, Josh. The most likely home for this, I think, is going to be my Substack. And I was thinking, and it probably won't be a protected post. Aside from that shit about my boss, there's not much there that needs to be protected. But maybe hearing first of all, thank you. That's very helpful. It's very helpful to hear that it works in its current form, which tells me that, okay, like maybe I won't. Sometimes I take this shit and I really like, if I perceive it not to be done, I'll just shower footnotes or artifice on it, right? I just shower artifice on it to try to shape it or to try to give meaning to the thing without destroying the shape of the thing, if that makes any sense. But in this case, maybe I'll just write a little introductory paragraph explaining the trip, right? And then put that in italics at the top and throw it up.
I mean, you mentioned footnotes, but I mean, that piece really didn't feel like it needed footnotes, because it has it's got almost like an annotation quality, but it doesn't have the footnotes, if you know what I mean. It's got asides and stuff like that in there that are clearly structured and it just serve the same purpose as your footnotes, I think. At least is that sort of how, I mean.
I think so. I agree, and I also, but I also understand the urge to then take things, and sometimes you need to. So your impulse to do that is sometimes correct. I've been doing it with the thing I worked on and read today. I mean, it was very different 2 weeks ago. But yeah, this one, I think it does not need that. And it's Substack. I can't say maybe it needs an intro, but just, I actually think it really makes sense. I think it's a lovely reflection of how your mind works. And I always think that's beautiful.
That's what I was trying to do, is catch my mind in motion, right? And
it's got a momentum to it, definitely.
Yeah.
As that, the rest stop part, that, really was really kind of well done, because it's fuck, it captures not only the momentum, the lack of inertia or lack of movement or just stasis or whatever. But, it captures it in just such a simple way, to start that paragraph.
That's interesting.
Ending with the quick succession of sentences, poetic, is a form that the Japanese have been doing since 1400 at least with Haibon. So clearly they intuited that this kind of thing works. That's the first thing I thought. I thought William has written a Haibon.
I really like what you're saying there, but it was totally a function of two different environments. The first half, I'm in my parent. Basically, if you want to know what the road trip was, half of the way I traveled, because I don't fucking drive, and because the train is not running yet from Plattsburgh down to DC. I went half the way with my parents, and then half the way with my former roommate, right? And I kind of described it in the piece, but my parents, when I'm in the car with my parents, everything's quiet. There's a little bit here and there. Maybe I can goad them into saying something, so it was easy to sit there and do paragraph as I thought. But on the way home, or on the second leg of the trip with my roommate, we were talking most of the time. So I was like, just, okay, there's a lull in the conversation. I had a thought, I'm gonna put a sentence in, I'm gonna put a sentence in, I'm gonna put a sentence in. But yeah, and what I was thinking I was going to do, like in my head while I was writing that, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna put a little transition in, like some italics, like an editorial note in the middle here, and then flesh each of these sentences out with footnotes and explain what I'm saying. But maybe I don't do that. Maybe I just kind of let it be what it is. And so thank you, Josh. That hadn't really occurred to me. So maybe that's exactly what I'll do. Anyway,
I love that you mentioned Watertown. Every time I hear Watertown, I think of that. Do you know that Frank Sinatra record, Watertown?
no, I don't think I have.
It's one of my favorite records, and it paints Watertown as just one of the most depressing places you could ever go. So it's taken on this like mythical visual to me.
Has anyone read the Back Patio Press book Watertown by Dan Eastman though?
No, but I was curious.
I saw that.
It's honestly the best poetry book I have read in the past year. Which, I mean, whatever my taste is, but I do read a lot of these things. Yeah, and it actually has a poem that references the Sinatra thing. So I did know that because he referenced it, because he's also from Watertown.
That album's insane. It's like it was like a concept record. It's like about a guy whose wife leaves him to become an actress in New York, and she just leaves him alone with the kids, and it's him just losing it alone, and it's just, it's so fucking sad.
The poem says it, that the one that, because he wrote about Watertown Eastman because he's from there, but the poem describes this Sinatra concept album about Watertown, and I thought it was like some weird made up thing, right?
No, it has a huge cult following.
And I looked it up and I was like, oh shit, this is the one part of the book that's true. Frank Sinatra is writing this concept album about this shitty town. That's, yeah.
Oh, so that's a poetry book, Watertown? I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, Dan Eastman. It's poetry and stories that are, I'm envious of the form. They seamlessly flow, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And what kind of poetry, real fast? Well, I would say formless. In a good way.
I'm going to have to read this, if only to spark another like deep upstate writer. And
well, you know what?
Deep upstate.
Here is the. No, we'll do this if there's not. Is there going to be an after thing? Because
there is going to be as soon as we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, let's do that, because I actually have a few here, very short. I can show, and you'll all love Watertown.
Oh wow! Even
that's a perfect cover for it.
Oh my god! Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up now, and I will, as usual, we'll leave it open for a little while, maybe a half an hour or so, because I do see my netbook is running out of juice here. But anyway, if you're watching this, excuse me, if you're watching this on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series, as I said before, hosted by Misery Tourism. If you're interested in reading your work, if you're interested in just coming and lurking and just soaking in the despair of what the fuck ever, we do this around on Friday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we tweet out the link to the Zoom call on our Twitter account @Misery Tourism. Okay, that's fucking it. Rudy, you can stop recording now. We're fucking done.